Chapter 1075. While he could be considered handsome, he had a listless look on his face, causing his temperament to be completely lacking. His purple clothes made the youth's skin appear even paler. Still, as long as he appeared there, it would be sufficient to make most people's hearts tremble. It was the upper exalt, Chen Qianhua. He raised his head and saw Yin Zhaoge. Chen Qianhua's listless eyes instantly lit up slightly. He looked at Yin Zhaoge from the corner of his eyes and appraised him. He immediately said, "This inconspicuous lower realm seems inconspicuous, but it is truly interesting. No wonder such an interesting person like you could appear here." Oh. Yin Zhaoge's gaze flickered as he noticed Chen Qianhua's puzzling words. Upper Exalt's words really perplexed this Yen. Chen Qianhua smiled. "Don't feign ignorance." Yin Zhaoge said mildly. "The 9 underworlds' corrosion can be encountered in any world. If we really want to talk about the uniqueness of this 8 extremities world, it should be that the exalted solar luminary and the exalted lunar luminary had both left their footprints here." Chen Qianhua extended a finger and shook it lightly. "The ones who left their footprints aren't just the 2 of them." Yin Zhaoge shrugged. "That's right. Now there's also you and the Brocade Emperor. From how I see it, the one who deserves the most attention isn't the exalted solar luminary, the exalted lunar luminary, or anyone else. It's," Chen Qianhua said. He stopped shaking his finger and pointed at Yin Zhaoge. "It's you." Yin Zhaoge smiled nonchalantly. "I'll take it as a compliment and accept it." "Thank you." Chen Qianhua laughed at Yin Zhaoge's shamelessness. "You're indeed interesting. Do you use interesting and boring as a standard to differentiate different people?" Yin Zhaoge asked. Chen Qianhua said lazily. "What else? Smart and stupid? Childish and mature? Benevolent and cruel? There are countless examples like this, but so what? Smart people might do stupid things, and loving people are sometimes the cruelest. To me, the difference between people is that only a few can surprise me, while most will never be able to do so. Surprises are interesting, the rest is boring." Chen Qianhua yawned. "That's all." Yin Zhaoge was surprised. "Then, has anyone ever told you that your way of doing things is also very senseless?" "Haha." Chen Qianhua laughed upon hearing this, asking instead, "What do you think the Brocade Emperor should do next? There's no need to play dumb about this, right? Everyone can see that he has gone berserk." Chen Qianhua said lazily. "In other words, he's crazy. Perhaps the Brocade Emperor did indeed suffer from cultivation deviation. Still, when I interacted with him, he did not lose his mind." Yin Zhaoge's tone was neither mild nor salty. "The Brocade Emperor has his own plans. What should be done is for him to decide for himself. At the very least, of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, the concealed sovereign and the female emperor, as well as the heaven emperor, are all in the world beyond worlds." Chen Qianhua chuckled. "Indeed, it's not a case of insanity. It's more like a soul-dissociating syndrome, isn't it?" As he laughed, he stretched out his hands and spread them out. He first raised his left hand. "One is sentimental, or should I say sentimental?" Then he raised his right hand. "The other is unfeeling, or should I say unfeeling?" Chen Qianhua brought his hands together before his chest. "They are currently fighting with one another." Yin Zhaoge's expression did not change, as he felt slightly solemn inside. He had a deep understanding of the supreme martial arts of the grand clear direct lineage. Therefore, he was able to basically deduce the Brocade Emperor's current state. Just from looking at what had happened at Star Reflecting Lake, Chen Qianhua had already been able to deduce many things. Or perhaps it was not just a deduction. Instead, he had some special information channel. If the Brocade Emperor were to decide for himself, it would most likely be how he could return to normal, how he could continue cultivating. Looking at Yin Zhaoge, Chen Qianhua smiled. As for the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, they probably think the same way. As for whether he ultimately walks the unfeeling path, or the sentimental path, that is not important. What is important is that the Brocade Emperor no longer suffers from a mental illness like the soul detachment syndrome. Because the Brocade Emperor who suffers from the soul detachment syndrome does things that are unexpected and hard for them to predict. Those people all like to have everything within their control. What they hate the most is when things exceed their predictions, and become uncontrollable. Chen Qianhua looked at Yin Zhaoge through the corner of his eye. In this aspect, you are the same type of person as them. Yin Zhaoge shot him a deep glance. Could it be that you are more than happy to see the Brocade Emperor remain in his current state? That's right. Chen Qianhua clapped his hands, chuckling. There are always unexpected surprises. That is what makes it interesting. Yin Zhaoge asked noncommittally. Since that is so, why did you come here instead of following the Brocade Emperor? Chen Qianhua pointed at Yin Zhaoge. It was not easy for Fu Jinxiu to become less boring. I certainly don't want him to vanish too quickly. Therefore, I found something for you to do first. Don't be in such a hurry to cause trouble. Yin Zhaoge said calmly. You also know how to make plans. According to you, if your plans and objectives are achieved, wouldn't it instead be boring, with no surprises at all? About that, I am not making plans. I am not planning anything, nor do I have any plans at all. Chen Qianhua waved his hands. I am just adding a little something to your plans and seeing how they turn out. If it is within my predictions, it will look like your plans have become my plans, with me substituting them. It is indeed rather boring if I do this too much, but it can at least pass the time. If it is not within my predictions, it will naturally be a pleasant surprise. Whether it is good or bad, it will still be a pleasant surprise. Chen Qianhua smiled. Now, let me give you a little surprise. See if you can repay me with something interesting. Amidst their conversation, the deep valley of the earth domain down below was already quaking and shaking. The tremors expanded towards the entire earth domain. Streams of blood-red light transformed into terrifying runes that seemed about to rip the great earth apart as they expanded into the surroundings. Where the roiling black fog passed, it actually began devouring the world outside the earth domain. Such a scene was undoubtedly a nightmare, descending for the martial practitioners of Broad Creed Mountain, of the Eight Extremities world. The terrifying Nine Underworlds was about to descend upon the Eight Extremities world once more. In entering the deep valley of the earth domain earlier, Chen Qianhua had shockingly destroyed the seal he had left down below. Not just that, the disturbance he had caused the great Nine Underworlds door beneath the earth domain to tear even greater. The momentum of the descent of the Nine Underworlds this time surpassed all previous ones. The terrifying devilish qi not only suffused the earth domain, even wanting to devour the surrounding world as well. At this moment, the Eight Extremities world was virtually about to be completely assimilated by the Nine Underworlds. Yin Zhaoge, however, did not lower his head to look at the deep abyss down below. He suddenly strode forward, instantly arriving before Chen Qianhua. Is this a pleasant surprise? Amidst his words, a palm mightily descended. Chapter 1076. Yin Zhaoge obscured the heavens with a palm, overturning the heavens with a palm. He raised his palm upwards before striking downwards. This cyclic heavenly seal truly possessed the power to trample the heavens. Even with his cultivation base suppressed to the third level of the martial saint realm, it still far surpassed when he had truly been a third-level martial saint that year. A lower world like the Eight Extremities world was already unable to bear the power of this palm of Yin Zhaoge's. As he executed the cyclic heavenly seal, the entire Eight Extremities world apart from the land of the Nine Underworlds down below, and the lake domain where the Brocade Emperor resided were virtually all about to be overturned. Yet because the earth domain and the lake domain were locked in place, terrifying scenes of distortion were formed elsewhere. Oh, you've really given me a pleasant surprise. Chen Qianhua's eyes lit up. I had thought that you would have held back in fear of destroying this world. He no longer looked listless. Instead, he laughed heartily. You really are an interesting person. Amidst his laughter, Chen Qianhua abruptly flipped his palm upwards, striking downwards. Still, if it is just the cyclic heavenly seal, it cannot be considered a pleasant surprise. In the air above the earth domain, Yin Zhaoge and Chen Qianhua's movements were virtually identical, just that one struck downwards while the other struck upwards. Cyclic heavenly seal versus cyclic heavenly seal. As their palms met, the terrifying scenes of distortion in the heavens and earth of the Eight Extremities world instead vanished. However, as their palms collided, the surrounding space instantly collapsed. This is no longer the world beyond worlds, Yin Zhaoge said mildly. I am not an early immortal bridge martial saint, and you are not a human exalt either. Amidst his words, his palm continued pressing downwards. In an instant, Chen Qianhua felt as though the surrounding heavens and earth had changed. Everything first became extremely massive before being unceasingly distanced from him. Because they were distanced, they began to shrink once more. However, the surrounding space was completely empty as he was the only one left. It was not that other things in the outside world had grown larger before distancing themselves. Instead, he himself seemed to have shrunk at this moment. He had been compressed to the point of being as insignificant as a speck of dust. The surrounding spiritual chi of the heavens and earth exploded at this moment, resembling tsunamis and landslides as it pressured down towards him from all directions. The terrifying momentum that enveloped the heavens and covered the earth caused him to feel like he was facing the great tide of a great sea, as he would be devoured and shattered no matter how he tried to evade it. The heavens and earth that had been opened up had to be restored. Everything in the world returned to before the heavens and earth had been split apart. The later heaven world returned to earlier heaven. Amidst the dim darkness of space, nothing could be seen as only the primordial chis of yin and yang intermingled. The two chis of yin and yang gradually vanished as well, only chaos indistinctly visible. Everything seemed to have returned to the beginning of earlier heaven, as it was formless and intangible, without light or darkness, as it was silent and formless. The royal heavens and earth no longer existed. Returning to earlier heaven? Even a true immortal might not be able to produce such a variation when executing the flipping sky seal. A strange light shot out of Chen Qianhua's eyes. You integrated the concepts of the Tai fist and the Taiji Yin Yang palm of the grand clear direct lineage within the cyclic heavenly seal? His figure suddenly shook, seemingly turning transparent, as it was formless and intangible. In Yin Zhaoge's senses, Chen Qianhua seemed to have completely vanished for a moment, no longer existing in this world. A supreme martial art of the grand clear direct lineage, the grand beginning bright emptiness form of the grand cosmos 5 manifestations. It had long since been rumored in the world beyond worlds that the upper exalt Chen Qianhua was well versed in countless supreme martial arts. Otherwise, he would not have been able to point out 8 sects in his youth. Many in the world beyond worlds knew that he cultivated in the cyclic heavenly scripture of the jade clear direct lineage. Still, besides the cyclic heavenly scripture, there was also the earth overturning seal of the Earth Empress direct lineage. Even more surprisingly, he was actually also proficient in supreme martial arts of the grand clear direct lineage. Still, while the grand beginning bright emptiness form possessed both offensive and defensive profundities, Chen Qianhua was still unable to withstand Yin Zhaoge's cyclic heavenly seal that was infused with the fist intent of the Tai fist and executed a reverting to earlier heaven transformation. The majestic concept caused Chen Qianhua's grand beginning concept to vanish into nothingness even without a forceful attack. Beneath this palm, grand beginning returned to grand commencement, then returned to grand simplicity, returning to nothingness. Still, Chen Qianhua was not naive enough to think that he would be able to receive Yin Zhaoge's attack just by relying on the grand beginning bright emptiness form alone. His figure seemed illusory as he punched towards Yin Zhaoge's cyclic heavenly seal. While he was barehanded, as Chen Qianhua punched outwards, light condensed which actually manifested in the form of a scepter. Chapter 1077. As Yin Zhaoge flipped his palm, similarly executing the cyclic heavenly seal, the concept manifesting yet another new phenomenon. The river of time seemed to appear in the void. The other end was the beginning of the pre-celestial realm, Tai formless, dim and dark, an expanse of primal chaos. The end was the end of post-celestial, the end of creation. All living things would enter destruction and return to nothingness. While Yin Zhaoge had yet to cultivate in the immortal exterminating sword of the numinous treasure 4 swords that represented the descent of doomsday and the collapse of the great Tao, having simultaneously cultivated in the immortal slaughtering, immortal trapping, and immortal ending swords, Yin Zhaoge had already created the concept of the end of creation. At this moment, Yin Zhaoge used the cyclic heavenly seal of the jade clear lineage as a link between the fist of the Grand Clear lineage, that symbolized the beginning, and the sword of the Prime Clear lineage that symbolized the end. The simultaneous cultivation of the three pure ones merged into one, finally presenting a cyclic heaven seal that surpassed the imagination of countless people in the world. The universe was reversed, and life and death were overturned. The most powerful as well as the most fundamental principle of yin and yang appeared within this palm of Yin Zhaoge's. This was one of the most extreme changes of the flipping sky seal. Since ancient times, many powerhouses who had cultivated the cyclic heavenly scripture and ascended to the immortal realm were unable to display this transformation of the cyclic heavenly seal. It was a transformation beyond the return to innate realm. As Yin Zhaoge's palm descended, the world before Chen Qianhua's eyes changed completely. Everything in the world disappeared, and the boundary between innate and acquired was erased. It was as if it wanted to reverse the process of creation, which meant an incomparably terrifying power. It crushed all principles, transcended physical forms, and destroyed all existences in human cognition. It was an enormous power that was boundless and immeasurable. As Yin Zhaoge's palm descended, it directly shattered the scepter formed of Chen Qianhua's true essence. Although the grand beginning bright emptiness physique had both offensive and defensive capabilities, its defense was extremely powerful. However, with Chen Qianhua's current attainments, he was unable to withstand Yin Zhaoge's cyclic heavenly seal. His illusory body was forcefully squeezed out of the space between the illusory and the real by an immense force. Yin Zhaoge's palm came crashing down. As if he was slapping a bug, Chen Qianhua was sent flying towards the deep abyss below and smashed right into the deep abyss of the earth domain. As Chen Qianhua was sent flying, Yin Zhaoge's thoughts moved slightly. A streak of golden light flew out from his body, transforming into a glorious sun in midair, as it suppressed the entire eight extremities world, bathing it in sunlight. It was the extreme yang seal. As the extreme yang seal descended, the surging devilish qi of the earth domain instantly fell silent. The change in the crack of the nine nether in the earth domain was more unusual than ever before. Yet under Yin Zhaoge's control, the extreme yang seal could be wielded freely now. Without the peak great devils of the nine underworlds making a move, how could the rampaging devilish qi alone withstand the extreme yang seal? Are you surprised? Are you happy? Yin Zhaoge looked down at the deep abyss below. Amidst the billowing black smoke, a figure was floating. Even though he wasn't affected by the devilish qi, he still looked rather pathetic. The arms that had forcibly received Yin Zhaoge's cyclic heavenly seal earlier were now mangled and distorted in a strange manner. His pale skin looked as if there was not a single trace of blood left in it. Just as Chen Qianhua opened his mouth to speak, blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, causing him to cough. Cough, cough, cough. You don't tell me you're walking the path of cultivating the three pure ones? Cough, cough. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to comprehend the fist intent of creation and innate restoration at the martial saint realm. Chen Qianhua coughed out blood unceasingly, but had a joyous expression on his face. Really, really cough, cough. I feel that you are much more interesting than the brocade emperor now. Amidst his words, the wounds on his mangled arms wriggled unceasingly as they rapidly healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. His face that had been pale as paper gradually regained some color. Powerful life force surged. Time that resembled water circulated. Intersecting space fluctuated. Vast myriad phenomena manifested. Balanced yin and yang circulated. Fluctuating mental fluctuations. The six concepts of yin and yang, time, space, life, matter and spirit simultaneously manifested, collectively forming the foundation of the world. Beneath this profound force, the injuries inflicted by Yin Zhaoge rapidly healed as well. Yin Zhaoge glanced at Chen Qianhua, raising his brows lightly. Oh, you have gathered the later Heaven Six scriptures of the Jade Clear lineage's primordial heavenly scriptures? The thoughts of the exalted solar luminary are truly hard to guess. He is also an interesting person. While Chen Qianhua's aura was still weak, he finally stopped coughing blood. A streak of green light flew out from his body, expanding amidst the wind as it instantly transformed into a long banner. A flourishing life force manifested from within, the concept of the 5 elements incarnations being infinite and boundless. This green banner descended towards the deep abyss of the earth domain as well, obstructing the extreme yang seal in midair. The tyrannical extreme yang seal that resembled the descent of the true sun was actually swept along by that banner, temporarily unable to descend. Without the suppression of the extreme yang seal, the 9 underworlds' devilish chi within the deep abyss of the hell domain began rampaging once more. Looking at that green banner, Yin Zhaoge's gaze hardened slightly as he finally felt rather taken aback. Hey, this is the Grand Longevity banner? It's actually in your hands? The Grand Longevity banner was a weapon forged by the exalted wood luminary of the Kunlun 9 luminaries that year, being renowned alongside the extreme yang seal and the extreme yin crown. Yin Zhaoge cared about it because his mother, Xue Chuqing, was the true orthodox descendant of the exalted wood luminary. If the information provided by Lu Jinggu, Chao Jie and Wang Pu was not wrong, the bright connection emperor Hu Yuexin was the sole disciple of the exalted wood luminary. You think that it should be in your mother's hands? Chen Qianhua shook his head. That should indeed be the case. Still, it first reached the disciple of the bright connection emperor, who was also your mother's master. Still she died, and this Grand Longevity banner did not reach your mother's hands. I obtained it from someone else, not knowing what it can be used for. I just kept it for now. Chen Qianhua smiled. It looks like my patience has paid off. It has been put to use today, even being in contact with you. It couldn't be any better. Looking at him, the corners of Yin Zhaoge's mouth slowly arched upwards. Right, it indeed couldn't be any better. Amidst his words, he ignored the devilish chi that was rampaging once more down below, as well as the Grand Longevity banner that was enveloping the extreme yang seal. Yin Zhaoge directly struck out with another palm towards Chen Qianhua. At the same time, a streak of light flickered in the distance, a massive silhouette suddenly appearing in the air above the earth domain. A great rock soared amidst 10,000 kilometers, instantly arriving before him. The silhouette of the great rock dissipated, the figure of Yin Zhaoge's Northern Ocean clone appearing. The Northern Ocean clone wielded a dark green bamboo cane that was 7 feet long and 7 segments long, swinging it in a circular motion towards the Grand Longevity banner. Struck by the dark green bamboo cane, the green light on the surface of the Grand Longevity banner instantly flickered. Under normal circumstances, a bamboo cane would have to be 8 feet long and 8 segments long before it could strike divine artifacts like the Grand Longevity banner and the extreme yang seal. Still, Chen Qianhua was currently facing Yin Zhaoge, as his control over the Grand Longevity banner had weakened. Additionally, the Grand Longevity banner was currently clashing with the extreme yang seal that was not inferior to it in the slightest. Chapter 1078. Once again, Yin Zhaoge unleashed another cyclic heavenly seal, blasting Chen Qianhua towards the deep abyss below. This palm strike twisted and broke Chen Qianhua's arms once again. He was unable to withstand this palm of Yin Zhaoge's, as his stance was directly broken. Yin Zhaoge's palm did not cease in its momentum as it struck down on his head. The foundation of the world was almost shattered. Although it protected Chen Qianhua from being killed by a single palm strike, his head was bleeding. Meanwhile, the Grand Longevity banner was suppressed by the extreme yang seal, yet it did not yield. As the green light flickered, the long banner fluttered in the wind. At this moment, it seemed to break through all obstacles, tenacious and unyielding, a sapling that sprouted from the soil and saw the sun. The sapling seemed to have forcefully broken through the chaos and wanted to grow with the brand new world. The world changed, and the divine tree grew old. It grew from a small sapling to a tree that covered the sky. The divine abilities of the Grand Longevity banner manifested as it sought to push aside the extreme yang seal that was suppressing it. However, wielding the dark green bamboo cane, Yin Zhaoge's Northern Ocean clone immediately struck downwards once more. The Grand Longevity banner flickered with green light, before it was instantly suppressed by the extreme yang seal once more. However, right at this moment, a fourth figure suddenly appeared in the sky above the earth domain. The newcomer's eyes flickered with specks of light that formed profound runes. His temperament was exactly the same as Chen Qianhua's. It was a clone that Chen Qianhua had refined. This clone of his was not looking at his real body at this moment, as he was instead gazing at Yan Zhaoge's Northern Ocean clone, and the dark green bamboo cane in the latter's hands. Treasurefall coin, Tree of Seven Wonders? The God-striking whip? The eyes of Chen Qianhua's doppelganger flickered slightly. It doesn't look like any of them, but it seems like you've studied them all. I really don't know where you got so many secrets from. Wait, if it's before the great calamity, there seems to be a place that could do it. That place should have been destroyed as well. The clone shook his head, an excited look appearing on his face. When I first heard the rumors, I didn't pay much attention to it. Who would have thought that even the Tai Sui banner couldn't withstand it? If it were any other high-rank saint artifact, it would be even more unbearable. With a wave of his hand, a ray of light flew into the air. It was a piece of gold. What was different about this coin was that it had a pair of wings on each side. Seeing the appearance of that copper coin, the pupils of the Northern Ocean clone dilated slightly. Treasure falling coin? When he took a closer look, he was able to distinguish that it wasn't the real treasure fall coin, but a replica. There were inscriptions on the coin, and it turned into a stream of light that disappeared in a flash. It seemed like it could only be used once, and its effects couldn't compare to the real treasure fall coin. But even so, it was like a legendary supreme treasure, a treasure that fell from the heavens. While the dark green bamboo cane was grasped by the Northern Ocean clone, illuminated by the treasured light of that winged coin, the Northern Ocean clone instantly felt his hand sink. Chen Qianhua smiled instead and said, "As expected, this is actually a treasure and not a weapon. It's a treasure that specializes in countering all weapons in the world. However, a treasure naturally has to be countered by the treasure fall coin." His doppelganger rushed forward with both hands. Golden light flashed, and what he displayed was actually a Buddhist divine art. Yan Zhaoge's first thought was that Chen Qianhua was related to the blessed lands of Buddhism of the future Buddha. But upon closer inspection, this clone of his did not seem to contain any Buddhist light. His cultivation base at the martial saint realm had all originated from his own bitter cultivation. In pre-Great Calamity times, due to the future Buddha, Buddhist disciples had all sincerely worshipped Buddha, worshipping him with the power of faith. The various Buddhist martial arts manuals all changed in this direction because of this. The Buddhist martial arts of the Gautama Buddha of Mystical Mountain that year were already rare in this world. Even the martial repository of the Heavenly Court's Divine Palace in pre-Great Calamity times only had a small collection of them. Yet, this Buddhist clone of Chen Qianhua clearly walked the path of seeing one's heart and understanding one's nature, verifying one's Tathagata self. He punched over, bearing the stance of Vajra subduing devils, as it was ferocious beyond compare. Yan Zhaoge's Northern Ocean clone did not evade as his fist intent manifested in the form of a kuanpeng, a great fish leaving the sea with immeasurable power, as it clashed head-on with Chen Qianhua's Buddhist clone. Wild thunder exploded amidst space, as the surging black qi in the surroundings was cleared away. The Northern Ocean clone's body shook slightly, as Chen Qianhua's Buddhist clone stumbled 2 steps backwards. Still, a dark red mark vaguely surfaced on the fist of Yan Zhaoge's Northern Ocean clone. In terms of strength, the Northern Ocean clone was superior. In terms of the sturdiness of his body, Chen Qianhua's Buddhist clone was slightly superior. Similar to the Northern Ocean clone, the strength of this clone of Chen Qianhua's already surpassed countless martial experts of the same cultivation level, as it was sufficient for his name to spread far and wide, rampaging throughout the world. Heh! Yan Zhaoge's Northern Ocean clone laughed coldly, his martial true intent condensing and manifesting as numerous silhouettes that soared above his head. Yan Zhaoge was taken aback for a moment before he chuckled. "Still, I can help you make this trip more interesting. I believe that you will be very willing to accept my parting gift." Saying thus, Yan Zhaoge formed seals with his hands, forming numerous seals before transforming into a black ball of light, which smashed into the crevice of the 9 underworlds. The black ball of light landed on Chen Qianhua's body, instantly forming a formless wound from which streams of black light leaked out. Affected by this formless devilish wound, The 9 underworlds instantly went into chaos, as countless great devils began converging towards him like sharks smelling blood. Chapter 1079. Having entered the 9 underworlds, Chen Qianhua's cultivation base was no longer affected by the dimensional laws of the 8 extremities world. His aura immediately began to surge, as if he had transformed from an ant into an elephant. Affected by this, his injuries also began to recover quickly. Back when King Xuanmu had descended into the 8 extremities world, he had been heavily injured by Yin Di. Even after returning to the world beyond worlds, his injuries had still not been light. However, after Chen Qianhua cultivated the world foundation and recovered to the human immortal stage, most of his injuries were quickly healed. However, the formless devilish wounds caused by the black ball of light thrown by Yin Zhaoge still existed. Black light overflowed from the wound, as if the wound was bleeding. Chen Qianhua instantly sensed powerful auras vibrating from all directions, and their attention was drawn to him. Among them, there was no lack of top-notch great demons of the netherworld. Demonic charm ritual? Chen Qianhua was taken aback. This is the legendary devilish bewitching ritual that Taoism experts used to lure and kill 9 underworld's devils in pre-Great Calamity times? Affected by this invisible demonic injury, the great demons of the 9 underworlds would gather like sharks in the sea that smelled blood. With Chen Qianhua's cultivation base, he would be in grave danger if he were to be surrounded and attacked by a large number of 9 underworlds experts when he ventured deep into the 9 underworlds. There was no need to even mention the consequences if a higher-level demon was attracted. If it were under other circumstances, even if he was injured, Chen Qianhua would be able to heal his injuries very quickly and leave the 9 underworlds within a short period of time, returning to the world beyond worlds via extra-dimensional space. But now, if he didn't get rid of the demonic bewitching ritual, he would be surrounded at all times. If he wanted to heal his injuries and leave the 9 underworlds, it would be even more difficult. Within a certain range, it was as eye-catching as a candlelight in the dark night, constantly marking the location of the demons of the netherworld. When Chen Qianhua came back to his senses, he saw that the crack was already gradually closing up under Yin Zhaoge's suppression. You even know about the demonic charm ritual? Chen Qianhua's eyes shone brightly. Indeed. The most interesting person that the 8 extremities world has ever produced is really you. Yin Zhaoge smiled nonchalantly, waving his hands at him. Don't be so courteous, just enjoy yourself. The crack to the 9 nether was sealed again. Chen Qianhua gradually disappeared from Yin Zhaoge's vision. The final scene was of many devils who had originally not been too interested in a mere lower world, like the 8 extremities world suddenly beginning to congregate before surrounding Chen Qianhua. He could be considered to have some understanding of this upper exalt now. This was a true madman. For the sake of the crazy thoughts that occasionally surfaced in his mind, he did not even care much about his own safety. Yin Zhaoge had previously still been wondering if Chen Qianhua would take revenge on Broad Creed Mountain, and him, after returning to the world beyond worlds, after suffering a setback here in the 8 extremities world. From the looks of it now, while the other party would definitely make a comeback, he would most likely only target him, Yin Zhaoge, because everyone else was boring in Chen Qianhua's eyes. Of course, this was not definite. The reason why madmen were hard to deal with was that they could not be judged by normal standards. This was especially so when this madman possessed extremely great destructive power, making him even more annoying. Even if Chen Qianhua, who was proficient in many supreme martial arts, was inferior to Yin Zhaoge, in terms of the density of his true essence at the same cultivation level, it was still shocking. Having cultivated in the 10 primordial heavenly scriptures of the Jade Clear direct lineage, and the later Heaven 6 scriptures, having manifested the foundation of the world, his recovery ability was even greater than Zhuang Shun, who cultivated in the Phoenix True Form scripture, and Taoist One Heaven, who cultivated in the Longevity Martial scripture. In terms of recovery ability alone, Yin Zhaoge was even inferior to him. Still, in terms of instantaneous eruption of power, Yin Zhaoge was the complete victor. The cyclic heavenly seal that had derived from reversing creation was the embodiment of the essence of Yin Zhaoge's simultaneous cultivation of the three purities. Therefore, at the same cultivation level, he had beaten Chen Qianhua into submission. Still, this fella really gave me a bit of a pleasant surprise. Yin Zhaoge looked at that banner that flickered with green light. The Grand Longevity banner was still clashing with the Extreme Yang seal. It was just that it was at a disadvantage, due to having been struck by the dark green bamboo cane earlier. Yin Zhaoge walked forward, attempting to collect the Grand Longevity banner. However, it was not easy at all. After all, this was a sacred artifact that was comparable to the Extreme Yang seal. The upper exalt Chen Qianhua had even left behind his fist intent mark within. A mark left behind by an exalt. It had been left behind by a human exalt, who was able to contend against emperors. With Yin Zhaoge's current cultivation level, it would be quite a hassle for him to deal with it. Still, Yin Zhaoge was still in a very good mood. To him, a high-grade sacred artifact like the Grand Longevity banner held a different meaning. Using the Extreme Yang seal and the dark green bamboo cane, Yin Zhaoge first forcibly suppressed the Grand Longevity banner before keeping it. How to truly control this divine artifact could be discussed later. Chapter 1080. After resealing the crevice to the 9 underworlds beneath the deep abyss of the Earth domain, and collecting the Grand Longevity banner, Yin Zhaoge did not linger any longer. He first headed west, heading to the Heaven Domain's Broad Creed Mountain. Due to the great battle with Chen Qianhua earlier, the spiritual qi circulation of the 8 extremities world had already been completely messed up. If he left it like this world would descend into desolation and decline. There was a mechanism on Broad Creed Mountain that had been established previously to gradually improve the spiritual qi circulation of the 8 extremities world. Now it could be put to use once more, helping to restore the spiritual qi circulation of this world once more. The heaven-shaking, earth-overturning changes were felt by those of Broad Creed Mountain as well. The people on the mountain could still be considered calm, because they had already received notice that something might have happened to the crevice to the 9 underworlds. However, their clan's most legendary expert, Yin Zhaoge, descended to the mortal realm, had already descended to the 8 extremities world to deal with this matter. After knowing this, everyone's emotions became calm. It was as if just hearing that name would make them feel carefree. The final result strongly proved this point once more. While it shocked the heavens and shook the earth, the changes to the 9 underworlds were still quelled once more, peace returning to the 8 extremities world. Yin Zhaoge's return to the mountain caused everyone's spirits to rise. The disciples of Broad Creed Mountain, who had interacted with Yin Zhaoge in the past, all felt honored. Seeing those familiar faces, Yin Zhaoge felt happy as well. The time flow of the 8 extremities world was only half that of the world beyond worlds, and a fifth of that of the vast ocean world. While Yin Zhaoge had been fighting for so many years in the world beyond worlds, less than 10 years had actually passed in the 8 extremities world. Still, many things had happened over these past few years. Due to Broad Creed Mountain's inclination to nurture Feng Qi, due to the spiritual qi of the 8 extremities world being more conducive to the advancement of martial practitioners, he had successfully stepped into the transcending mortality martial grandmaster realm. Some outstanding talents had also arisen amongst the younger generation. Similarly, however, disciples of the clan had perished as well. Currently, Broad Creed Mountain stood alone in the 8 extremities world, virtually having no enemies. However, if Broad Creed Mountain disciples were to suffer cultivation deviation in the process of cultivating, or if they entered the Great Western Desert, the Southern Underground Palace, or the Marsh of Illusory Sea to temper themselves, there was still the possibility of them encountering danger. For example, Fang Zhuan's personal disciple Lu, who had been acclaimed alongside Yin Zhaoge, Su Fei and Xikong Qing that year, while he had avoided the tribulation of falling to the dark side, due to Su Fei's assistance during the Great Tribulation of Broad Creed Mountain back then. At the end of the day, due to his unstable mental state and his desire for quick success, he had suffered cultivation deviation and perished while in death seclusion. Perhaps he already no longer had the heart to compare himself with Yin Zhaoge, but Xikong Qing, Feng Yunsheng, Ing Long Tu and the others had all surpassed him. causing him to feel greater and greater pressure. He wasn't the first person to die in seclusion, and he wouldn't be the last. The path of martial arts cultivation had never been a smooth one. After having regained the balance of spiritual qi in the Eight Extremities world, Yin Zhaoge bid farewell to Feng Qi and the others, before returning to Turbid Wave Pavilion of the Lake Domain. This place was tranquil from beginning to end, as if it was isolated from the world. Even when Yin Zhaoge and Qin Qianhua's battle had been heaven-shaking and earth-overturning earlier, this place had remained peaceful, resembling another world altogether. After greeting in Qinglin, Xie Yuchan, and the other Turbid Wave Pavilion martial practitioners, Yin Zhaoge returned to the small courtyard where Chen Minjing resided. Within the courtyard, the Brocade Emperor was currently conversing with Chen Minjing. His attitude was gentle, free and easy as his words flowed like pearls, causing Chen Minjing, who knew his identity, to gradually feel less restrained. Sitting by the side, Meng Wan was all smiles. She had rarely been so happy these past few years. Seeing Yin Zhaoge return, the Brocade Emperor turned and glanced at him, smiling as he asked, "From the looks of it, Yuan, has Qin Qianhua returned to the world beyond worlds?" "He went to the 9 underworlds of his own accord." Yin Zhaoge shook his head. While he had been pulled back by his body, that seemed to have been devoured by the 9 underworlds at the time. If Qin Qianhua had broken free of the suppression of the dimensions of the heavens and earth on his cultivation base, he would have been able to break free of the corrosion of the 9 underworlds at the same time, ascending and returning to the world beyond worlds. Meanwhile, Yin Zhaoge had already been prepared for this. The existence of the 9 underworlds would obstruct Qin Qianhua's ascension somewhat. Yin Zhaoge had mightily smashed down with the cyclic heavenly seal, forcibly sending Qin Qianhua into the deep abyss, in order to obstruct him with the crevice of the 9 underworlds. This way, if he attempted to break free of the suppression of the power of dimensions and ascend to the world beyond worlds, Yin Zhaoge would be prepared to intercept him then. Of course, even so, he would not have sufficient confidence of leaving Qin Qianhua behind for good. Still, for Qin Qianhua, who possessed outstanding strength and cultivation base, this was the best strategy to deal with him. Sadly, a lunatic's way of thinking was broad. Hearing his words, the Brocade Emperor nodded slowly. This indeed seems like his usual style. Still, before he left, I gave him a devilish bewitching ritual. Yin Zhaoge shrugged. With so many devils surrounding him, even if he does not die, he will not be able to leave the 9 underworlds within a short period of time. Having temporarily restricted this unstable factor to the 9 underworlds, Yin Zhaoge would be able to search for Feng Yunsheng, along with the Brocade Emperor, and Meng Wan without worry. Even though Feng Yunsheng's trip to a foreign dimension might also be related to the 9 underworlds, there are few who are willing to battle with Qin Qianhua. A hint of a smile appeared on the Brocade Emperor's handsome face. The main reason is naturally that most people are unable to defeat him. Still, even those who can defeat him would find it pointless to battle with him. Because this person has no concept of life or death, success or failure, honor or disgrace. Even if one wins against him, he would not feel humiliated, vexed, embarrassed or disappointed. The Brocade Emperor smiled. He would not care how many spoils of war the victors wrested from him. He would not even care about life or death. What Qin Qianhua was passionate about was not battle itself. Instead, he was interested in whether his opponents could bring him anything in the process of battling. Apart from that, he did not really care about gratitude or enmity, victory or defeat, life or death, gains or losses. Perhaps it should be said that what he pursued was not in the same circle as most people at all. The world of madmen was always different. Without the grief and rage of the loser, the joy of the victor would naturally be much dimmer. The Brocade Emperor said casually. For those who understand Qin Qianhua, even if they win against him, there is nothing to be happy about. Yin Zhaoge chuckled. That might not be the case. In Qin Qianhua's words, slapping him like a bug is actually rather fun for me. As for what he thinks, I do not care. The Brocade Emperor smiled. How many people of similar cultivation realms can slap him like a bug? He stood up, looking at Meng Wan and Qin Minjing. Since this matter is already over, let us return to the world beyond worlds. I hope that fellow Taoist Chun will not blame me for disturbing you today. While I have said this before, I still have to say one more thing. Having been separated from Wan for so many years, I have not been able to fulfill my responsibilities as a father. It is all thanks to you for raising and teaching Wan. I truly cannot thank you enough. Chapter 1081. After taking his leave of Chun Minjing, Yin Zhaoge left the Eight Extremities world along with the Brocade Emperor and Meng Wan, returning to the world beyond worlds. This time, he directly walked through the wound of the sky of the Sacred Sun clan, arriving at the Water Ridge peak of the back mountain of Broad Creed Mountain, in the world beyond worlds. Shall we go to Golden Court Mountain first? Yin Zhaoge looked inquiringly at the Brocade Emperor. In rebuilding the Sacred Sun clan, senior apprentice brother Tang cannot do without the support of the Southeastern Exalt. The Brocade Emperor smiled. It is naturally fine. It has also been a long time since I have seen fellow Taoist Chow. The group immediately set out for Golden Court Mountain. On the way, some news channels contacted Yin Zhaoge, informing him of the latest situation in the world beyond worlds. There was good news and bad news. When it rains, it pours. The worst news was that the concealed sovereign had gone into seclusion and isolated himself from the outside world. Whether it was Wang Zhengsheng, Li Juanxin, and the others on the southern high peaks Qilin Cliff, or Wang Pu and the others on the northern high peaks Jade Capital Crag, they could only sit and watch helplessly. Female Empress Jia Mingkong had never been interested in such matters that had nothing to do with her. The Heaven Emperor and the Brocade Emperor were not on good terms in the first place. With him interfering in this matter, the Brocade Emperor's reaction would be hard to predict. If they were not careful, a battle between perfected immortals might break out. Of course, there was also good news. The Encompassing Emperor, who was one of the world beyond worlds 5 emperors alongside the Brocade Emperor, and the Heaven Emperor, had recently returned to the world beyond worlds from extra-dimensional space. The Sunluo Emperor Li Jun was also known as the Encompassing Emperor. The Lord of the World Beyond Worlds Central June Heaven Territories Kunlun Mountains round Wisdom Ridge, one of the 5 emperors, possessed outstanding strength. In the great battle between the Brocade Emperor Fu Yunqi and Mars Halberd earlier, he had been one of the mediators and witnesses. Under his witness, the Brocade Emperor and Mars Halberd finally agreed to battle amidst space. However, on the day of the battle, the Encompassing Emperor had headed to the void outside and did not return to watch the ceremony. Only the Earth Exalt Wang Zhengsheng was responsible for bearing witness. In the following years, the Encompassing Emperor, the Earthly Sovereign, the Sword Sovereign and the other experts had remained in extra-dimensional space, not having returned to the world beyond worlds. Not long ago he finally returned. As soon as he had returned, before he could even return to his Dao Arena residence in Round Intelligence Ridge's Myriad Phenomena Cave, he had received news that the Brocade Emperor had suffered cultivation deviation. The southern blazing heaven territory's star-reflecting lake revealing the name of the immeasurable heavenly lord had nearly caused a huge commotion. While the situation had not escalated due to Yin Zhaoge, the Brocade Emperor's own disciple He Shixing, and the Earth Exalt Wang Zhengsheng's disciple Li Juanxin had both been conned. In many people's minds, there was also Yin Zhaoge who was also present. After learning that Yin Zhaoge and the Brocade Emperor had both gone to Golden Court Mountain, the Encompassing Emperor had come here as well. Yin Zhaoge had naturally long since heard of the Encompassing Emperor Li Jun. Still, this was his first time seeing him in person. Dressed in black, he had white hair and a youthful face. His shiny white hair was combed neatly. As he stood there, he seemed to be one with the world, and it was difficult to distinguish him from the world. Every single movement he made seemed natural, almost like the Tao. Yin Zhaoge greets the Encompassing Emperor. Yin Zhaoge smiled in greeting. Looking at Yin Zhaoge, the Encompassing Emperor nodded slightly. Heroes come from the young. It is truly a fortunate thing for the exalted gold luminary to have such a bloodline, and also a fortunate thing for our Taoism. You overpraise me, Encompassing Emperor. Yin Zhaoge smiled. He could clearly see the pity in the other party's gaze. Indeed, after greeting Yin Zhaoge and Chao Jia, the Encompassing Emperor's gaze fell on the Brocade Emperor. The brocade emperor's expression was warm as a spring breeze. I have troubled you again, Taoist brother. I am ashamed. The encompassing emperor sighed. I once advised you not to walk this path that year. If you had listened to my advice, would things have turned out this way? What will come will come. I enjoyed 1,000 years of peace before. But didn't I still have to face that tribulation in the end? The brocade emperor smiled. At least the tribulation of Mars halberd was finally overcome. The encompassing emperor said, having overcome the old tribulation, a new tribulation has arisen. This tribulation before you will not be easy to overcome as well. The smile on the brocade emperor's face vanished as he was silent for a moment before he said, Indeed. He raised his head and looked at the encompassing emperor. What do you intend to do now that you have come, Taoist brother? That will depend on what you intend to do. The encompassing emperor's snowy white brows twitched slightly. The incident of star-reflecting lake must not happen again. The brocade emperor raised his head slightly, murmuring after a while. What do I intend to do? I can't say for sure myself. Hearing his words, the expressions of Yin Zhaoge, Chao Jia, and the encompassing emperor all turned solemn. They all knew that while the brocade emperor's words seemed vague and perfunctory, it was actually the most accurate description of what he was thinking. My daughter has a close friend who headed to the extreme northern lands and has yet to return after entering a foreign dimension. It has already been many years since they last met, and they still miss each other. The brocade emperor regained his wits, saying, I intend to head north with my daughter and attempt to search for her. We father and daughter have been separated for many years. I have never fulfilled my responsibilities as a father. Every time I think about it, I feel rather guilty. He looked at Meng Wan with a gentle gaze. Wan is sensible and has been consoling me all this while. It is rare for her to have something that she wishes to do. As her father, I naturally have to do all I can for her. The encompassing emperor's gaze was calm, and without ripples, as he just glanced silently at Meng Wan. After his gaze swept between the brocade emperor and Meng Wan, the encompassing emperor said slowly, There are a few dimensional passageways in the extreme northern lands that lead to a foreign dimension that vaguely have something to do with the 9 underworlds. Yes, my daughter has been extremely worried about this. The brocade emperor nodded. Still, that is a minority at the end of the day. The encompassing emperor said, I wonder what fellow Taoist Fu thinks of this traveling together with your daughter? With this matter concerning the 9 underworlds, the encompassing emperor would not take it lightly. While he and the brocade emperor were old friends, the latter appeared incomparably normal as they were chatting happily now. Still, only the heavens knew what would happen if the brocade emperor left. The matter of star-reflecting lake was sufficient for all those in the know to feel as though they were facing a great enemy, as they raised their guard against this former lord of ingenious flying peaks Red Lotus Cliff. I naturally do not mind. It is just that I will inevitably feel uneasy if I trouble you, fellow Taoist. The brocade emperor smiled as he looked at Yin Zhaoge. Right, Wan'er's friend is precisely this little friend Yan's beloved wife. The encompassing emperor raised his brows slightly. Oh, does little friend Yan wish to travel together with us? Yin Zhaoge similarly smiled as he answered. My wife and I have not seen each other for many years as well. I miss her dearly. It is rare that the 2 majesties have personally come looking for us. I must make this trip together no matter what. I hope that the encompassing emperor will allow it. The encompassing emperor glanced deeply at him before nodding. Of course. Looking at Chao Jia, the brocade emperor smiled. Better early than late. We will set off now. If he and his disciples had participated in the capture, Xue Chuqing's escape would have become incredibly difficult, especially when Xue Chuqing's cultivation level was still low back then. Even though Xue Chuqing possessed half of the river diagram to protect herself, there were too many places where she needed to use it. Even if the peak experts were restraining one another, and the Northern Exalt would not personally make a move, with a great number of profound remnant locale disciples participating in the capture, it would be very easy for Xue Chuqing to attend to one thing and lose sight of another, greatly increasing the risk of her concealment. It was precisely because they were proficient in this that the Northern Exalt's lineage had always kept a low profile, rarely participating in the various disputes. Yan Zhaoga greets the Northern Exalt. Seeing the Northern Exalt, Yan Zhaoga bowed. It has been some time since I last saw Miss Guan. How is she? Just from external appearances alone, the Northern Exalt was probably the most inconspicuous of the 10 Exalts. His appearance was haggard and he was old. His eyes were turbid, and he even seemed a little deaf. His spirit was nowhere to be seen, as if he could pass away at any time. Amongst the 10 Exalts, the oldest and most senior was undoubtedly the Earth Exalt, Wang Zhengcheng. Next was the Northeastern Exalt Lu Jinggu. Of course, he was still much younger than Wang Zhengcheng. Next was the Northern Exalt. It was just that from external appearances alone, the older Lu Jinggu instead looked younger than the Northern Exalt, as he was ferocious, authoritative, and spirited. After exchanging greetings with Yan Zhaoga, the Brocade Emperor, and the Encompassing Emperor, the Northern Exalt smiled. This little girl is a little crazy. Little friend Yan, please don't laugh at her. Yan Zhaoga said, not at all. It is all thanks to Miss Guan's enthusiasm that this Yan was able to find out the general whereabouts of my wife. The Northern Exalt was naturally aware of his intentions in coming to the Northern Profound Heaven territory, having already communicated with Cloud Pavilion Mountains, Profound Remnant locale beforehand. He pondered for a moment before saying, little friend Yan, little friend Fu, the two of you should first make preparations. The dimensional passageway that little friend Feng used to head to extra-dimensional space this time has probably really been corroded by the 9 underworlds, becoming a land of tranquil stream. The so-called land of tranquil stream was not a domain of the 9 underworlds, as it had been formed from the corrosion of space by the 9 underworlds. The power of the 9 underworlds was strange and domineering, as it would corrode any world, whether it was tangible or intangible. Still, extra-dimensional space was chaotic and complex, as it was not easy for the 9 underworlds to corrode it. An extremely long period of time would be required before it could truly become a part of itself. Before that, space that had been tainted by the devilish chi of the 9 underworlds could still not be considered a true land of the 9 underworlds. Therefore, it was called a tranquil stream, as it could generally be considered a gray area between the 9 underworlds and the great 1,000 worlds of the universe, being different from the crevices of the 9 underworlds that were commonly known to corrode worlds. After having received advance notice of Yan Zhaoga and the Brocade Emperor's intentions in coming here, the Northern Exalt, who had not personally made a move for many years, had performed a divination. With the difference in cultivation bases between him and Feng Yunsheng, it should have been easy for him to divine her whereabouts under normal circumstances. Even if Feng Yunsheng was in extra-dimensional space and unable to accurately pinpoint her location, he would still be able to find out the general direction. Still, the divination was chaotic and unclear. The result was obvious. I understand. Many thanks for the Northern Exalt's advice. Yan Zhaoga inhaled deeply, cupping his hands towards the Northern Exalt. Mengwan looked rather nervously at her father as the Brocade Emperor said, let's go take a look. The Northern Exalt said, this old man will accompany the 2 majesties to the extreme northern lands and wait there to ensure that nothing goes wrong. The Encompassing Emperor looked calmly at the Northern Exalt, nodding towards him. They immediately set off, quickly arriving at the icy and snowy lands of the extreme northern lands. Following the clues that Feng Yunsheng had left behind, they searched together as they finally gradually settled on an area. The Brocade Emperor raised a hand, the world before them instantly changing. The all-encompassing wind and snow, and the pure icy plains all turned illusory, as it was as if the real heavens and earth had become a flat image. This was a variation of the grand clear supreme martial art, the grand beginning bright emptiness form. While the grand beginning bright emptiness form possessed outstanding defensive power, it was not a purely defensive technique. It possessed both offensive and defensive capabilities, naturally possessing boundless miraculous uses. It was just that the Brocade Emperor was currently the only one in the world beyond worlds who possessed such profound attainments. As everyone gazed over, they saw a few black lines vaguely drifting amidst the heavens and earth that seemed to have transformed into a painting of mountains and rivers. It was as if the painting had been torn apart and repaired afterwards. Before the Brocade Emperor had executed this technique, one would not have been able to see these marks in the normal heavens and earth. Those were the dimensional crevices that would occasionally appear and vanish very quickly here. Chapter 1083. Looking at the streaks of electricity within that black hole, Yin Zhaoge and the others seemed to be deep in thought. The Northern Exalt sighed softly. That was grand illusory spatial thunder, right? The encompassing emperor said. The essence has already dispersed. It can no longer be called true grand illusory spatial thunder. However, perhaps there will be true grand illusory spatial thunder when we enter deep into the void. The grand illusory spatial thunder was one of the 9 heavenly immortal thunders that had been renowned even before the great calamity. It was ranked second among the 9 heavenly deity thunders, second only to the legendary primeval ancestral thunder. It was above the 5 elements thunder of fortune, heart's will thunder, and other heavenly thunder arts. If there is grand illusory spatial thunder disrupting space, there will probably be more obstructions along the way. Yin Zhaoge gazed at that black hole. The Northern Exalt said, This old man will stand guard here. You can move out at any time. The Brocade Emperor nodded slightly. Let us set off now. As he spoke, he flicked his sleeve and brought Meng Wan along as he entered the dimensional passageway. Please wait, Northern Exalt. Yin Zhaoge bowed towards the Northern Exalt before entering alongside the encompassing emperor. The Northern Exalt watched them leave before sitting down cross-legged at the entrance of the dimensional passageway, no longer moving. As time passed, the domain passageway disappeared once again. On the vast ice field, there was only an old figure sitting quietly in the wind and snow. As Yin Zhaoge entered this dimensional passageway, it was not like when he had traversed through other dimensions earlier, where the various colorful scenes before him had changed. This place was pitch black from beginning to end, and nothing could be seen. Only flashes of lightning could be seen from time to time. Walking in this domain passage, one could clearly feel the pressure of the void domain force, which was full of malice towards those who stepped into it. If one's cultivation was slightly lower, they would probably be squeezed into a pile of flesh and blood in an instant. If not for the Brocade Emperor's protection, Meng Wan's cultivation base would not have been sufficient to traverse this place. Yin Zhaoge glanced at her. According to the Brocade Emperor's current style of doing things, Meng Wan's safety should still be guaranteed for the time being. It was just that he dared not guarantee this. The Brocade Emperor's current thoughts were just too hard to fathom. If there was even the slightest fluctuation in his thoughts, he did not even need to do anything himself. As long as he ignored Meng Wan, who was in this domain passageway, Meng Wan would immediately suffer. Therefore, Yin Zhaoge had to pay attention to the Brocade Emperor's condition. Of course, it was not just for Meng Wan. It was also for Yin Zhaoge himself. Chapter 1084. The deeper they went into the land of tranquil stream, the more they could feel the terrifying aura of the 9 underworlds. Yin Zhaoge, the Brocade Emperor, and the encompassing emperor were naturally fine. Even with Meng Wan's cultivation, she was no longer able to maintain her foothold. After being corroded by the power of the netherworld, her mind would gradually go haywire. Even if one's heart was firm, they were not emotionless and desireless people. They would still be affected. It was all thanks to the jade pendant that the Brocade Emperor had given her to protect her, allowing her to clear her heart and focus her mind, that she was able to continue walking. Yin Zhaoge and the others weren't in the mood to deal with the spirits here. And those spirits were also unable to pose any threat to them, as they simply swept past them. Following the traces left behind by Feng Yunsheng, the group moved forward with a goal in mind, and their efficiency was much higher. After continuing walking like this for a few days, Yin Zhaoge and the others instead slowed down. Everyone's expression became solemn as they stared at the void in front of them. They had reached the edge of the land of tranquil stream. If they went further, they would be close to the source of the void erosion, which was the connection with the 9 serenities. Feng Yunsheng's footsteps seemed to continue forward. After looking around for a while, Yin Zhaoge did not find any other clues. It seemed like the only choice was to continue forward. The encompassing emperor asked slowly, When this little friend Feng left Broad Creed Mountain for adventuring outside, did he bring along the Extreme Yin Crown? He now already knew that Feng Yinsheng was the person of Broad Creed Mountain, who wielded the Extreme Yin Crown. The Extreme Yin Crown has always been controlled by my wife, Yin Zhaoge answered. At the side, Meng Wan's expression was calm as usual. The outcome of the fateful battle with Feng Yinsheng in the past had allowed her to completely let go of her obsession in this aspect. The Sanluo Emperor muttered to himself, I wonder if little friend Feng has reached the Seeing Divinity Martial Saint realm. Although there were some traces left by Feng Yinsheng along the way, due to the erosion of time, there were no longer any details to speak of. It was difficult to determine Feng Yinsheng's current cultivation, strength, and state of mind. If senior apprentice sister Feng successfully breaks through space and sees true divinity, she would be able to unleash the full power of the Extreme Yin Crown for a short period of time. Meng Wan was also a maiden of Extreme Yin, having once wielded the Extreme Yin Crown for many years, as she was extremely clear on this. It was unknown how the exalted lunar luminary had forged this sacred artifact, such that it was different from other sacred artifacts. Yin Zhaoge said mildly, while my wife has the intention of tempering herself, this matter concerns the 9 underworlds. She definitely understands the gravity of it, and will not recklessly take the risk. Yin Zhaoge knew what the encompassing emperor was worried about. If she could fully exert the power of the Extreme Yin Crown, not only would Feng Yinsheng be able to protect herself, she would also be able to more effectively resist the encroachment of the 9 underworld's devilish will, stabilizing her mental state. The Extreme Yin Crown was a sacred artifact on the same level as the Extreme Yang Seal, its might standing at the peak of the mortal realm. As long as she did not encounter a great devil that was equivalent to a Dao Sect's immortal realm expert, Feng Yinsheng would not be in too much danger, even if she entered the 9 underworlds. On the contrary, if one had not reached the Seeing Divinity stage and was unable to fully wield the power of the Extreme Yin Crown, even if Feng Yinsheng could wield a portion of the Extreme Yin Crown's power, recklessly venturing deep into the 9 underworlds would be hard to predict. Especially if she was still in the merging Avatar Martial Saint realm and had been bewitched by the 9 underworlds, which was why she had entered this place. The nature of the matter would be different. This time, they had to make a new plan for their search. However, since he had already come here, Yin Zhaoge naturally wouldn't just let the matter rest. We should still go in and search for him, the Brocade Emperor said now. Perhaps little friend Feng is in need of our help right now. The encompassing emperor nodded. Let's go. The group of people continued forward, and the soul-stirring call began to ring in their ears, getting louder and louder until it was almost deafening. The gloomy light in front of him began to gradually disperse. Black fog filled the air, faintly flashing with an evil and ferocious blood-red luster. This was no longer the crevice to the 9 underworlds as seen in the 8 extremities world. Instead, it resembled a boundless sea of bitterness, directly facing the 9 underworlds. There's something strange about this place. Although the devilish chi of the 9 underworlds is also corroding the void, it's not convenient. The Brocade Emperor glanced at it before saying slowly, it seems like some sort of existence is interfering with the 9 underworlds' corrosion of space. The encompassing emperor shook his head after observing for a moment. It's related to Grand Void Spatial Thunder, but it's not just Grand Void Spatial Thunder. The group of people took the initiative to move forward, and finally entered the vast black fog. The moment he took that step, he felt like he was in a different world. It was not the feeling of going from the 8 extremities world to the vast ocean world, to the floating life world, or from the 8 extremities world to the world beyond worlds. Instead, he felt as if he had become a different kind of life, a different form of life. It was similar to the death of the physical body, and the soul leaving the body, turning from a human to a ghost. The entire universe was barren and wild. After entering, let alone Meng Wan, even Yin Zhaoge felt slightly uncomfortable. Previously, when he had faced the invasion of the devilish chi of the 9 underworlds, he had been in another world at the end of the day. Now that he was truly within the 9 underworlds, that bewitching force was more than 100-fold stronger. Yin Zhaoge even felt that the faceless devilish scripture that he had only ever used as a reference and never truly cultivated, and seemed to have a life of its own. Relying on the power of the 9 underworlds, the devilish scriptures in his memories vaguely seemed to form a seed of their own, taking root and germinating within Yin Zhaoga's soul. When everything had developed and grown strong, it would be time for them to take over. Besides the faceless devilish scripture, there were many other devilish arts that seemed to be automatically drawing in devilish qi, forming numerous devils. It was just that they were not as intense as the faceless devilish scripture. The 9 underworlds is indeed extraordinary. I wonder how Yinxing is doing now. Yin Zhaoga calmed his mind, silently circulating his profound art as he suppressed and cleanly eliminated the devils one by one. He paid attention to the Brocade Emperor's situation. The Brocade Emperor's current state could be said to be extremely easy for the 9 underworlds to exploit. While the current him might still be flawless physically, the same could not be said for his soul and thoughts. The encompassing emperor had the same thoughts as Yin Zhaoga. The reason he had come along on this trip was to guard against such latent dangers. The Brocade Emperor was as per normal, as he seemed completely oblivious to it. He also seemed not to notice the attention of Yin Zhaoga and the encompassing emperor at all. He simply continued searching for the clues left behind by Feng Yunsheng, while also worrying about Meng Wan. They each harbored their own thoughts as they continued to advance in this world where no one should exist. The aura of a living person instantly drew the attention of numerous devils. Still, the devils that appeared nearby were merely equivalent to human martial saints at most, as they were naturally unable to obstruct the footsteps of Yin Zhaoga and the others. Still, not long after they had entered, Yin Zhaoga and the others suddenly felt the devilish qi and baleful qi in the surroundings seemingly gradually diminishing. They exchanged glances. There is indeed a unique existence here that is interfering with the 9 underworlds region and corroding the surrounding extra-dimensional space. Yin Zhaoga and the others immediately identified their direction, heading towards where the devilish qi and baleful qi were weakening. For example, in the legends of the investiture of the gods, Taoist Master Jade Cauldron, the personal disciple of the Jade Clear lineage's founder, the Lord of Primordial Beginning. For example, one of the 4 imperials of Taoism, the Purple Tenuity Emperor, had transformed one of the Grand Clear Direct lineages, post-celestial 5 ultimates of the Grand Clear Direct lineage, deriving the Tao of the Sword from the Grand Heavenly Talisman. Along with the Prime Clear Direct lineage expert, the Lord of Plentiful Treasure, the 2 of them had always been hailed as Taoism's top 3 experts in the Tao of the Sword. In truth, however, the Prime Clear lineage had more experts in the Tao of the Sword. The Lord of Plentiful Treasure was merely the most outstanding amongst them. Outside of Taoism was the Mystical Mountain. After the Gautama Buddha had just attained transcendence, a sword son of Buddhism had appeared there. He discussed the Tao with the descendants of the Prime Clear lineage at that time. However, ever since the Buddhist sword son passed away, the Buddhist sword Tao went silent once again. However, it was worth noting that while these experts were outstanding, not allowing the Prime Clear sword cultivators to dominate, the sword Taos they inherited were still weaker than the numinous Treasure 4 swords. Or, it should be said that they were challenging the Prime Clear sword cultivators, and not the Prime Clear Sword Tao. The Prime Clear Sword Tao's first true challenge had actually come after the Great Calamity. It was precisely Yin Zhaoga's grandfather, the exalted gold luminary, Yin Xintong, who had soared into the world and improved upon the sword Tao of the Jade Cauldron cultivated deity, as he created the Jade Illusory Heaven-opening sword. Only then had the numinous Treasure 4 swords truly had an opponent. Of course, it could not be said that the current Jade Illusory Heaven-opening sword would definitely be comparable to the numinous Treasure 4 swords. Still, those with knowledge could see the potential within. The crux of the Jade Illusory Heaven-opening sword lay in the fact that Yin Xintong's cultivation base had yet to reach its peak. If he had not died young, with his talent, his swordsmanship would have continued to improve as his cultivation base continued to improve. He would have eventually created a supreme sword art that was truly comparable to the numinous Treasure 4 swords. Before this, the person most likely to achieve this had been the Purple Tenuity Emperor. Yet, following the great calamity, everything had come to a halt. Yin Xintong had followed in his footsteps, causing countless people to sigh in pity. Still, there was another sword art outside of the prime clear sword Dao that was currently competing with the jade illusory heaven-opening sword within the 9 underworlds. It was neither the Buddhist sword Dao, nor the purple Tenuity Emperor's sword Dao. Instead, it was a devilish sword. I don't seem to have heard of such a sword art of the devilish Dao in pre-Great Calamity times. Yen Zhaoge recalled as he looked at the brocade emperor and the encompassing emperor. The encompassing emperor pondered. Thinking about it carefully, the sword intent of the jade illusory heaven-opening sword here is probably left behind by the exalted gold luminary. Battling the jade illusory heaven-opening sword in the devilish domain of the 9 underworlds. This old man vaguely recalls a legend. The sword devil Yin Shiyang. The brocade emperor continued. Yen Zhaoge's gaze flickered. Sword devil? The brocade emperor said. Let's not guess blindly. Let's get closer and take a look. That's fine too. Yen Zhaoge nodded as they approached. The black fog before them gradually dispersed, the devilish chi of the 9 underworlds no longer remaining. Instead, a lustrous white light flickered, as it was exceptionally striking amidst this devilish domain. The white light vaguely contained a metallic luster, as the rumbling of thunder vaguely seemed to resound. Yen Zhaoge and the others came to a realization. Right, so there were traces left behind by grand illusory spatial thunder here. Coupled with the entanglement of the 2 sword intents, it is no wonder that it was still able to maintain such a powerful state after so long. While the immortal thunder itself no longer existed, the thunderbolt and the 2 sword intents had created a small independent space in this corner of the 9 underworlds that year. As they entered, the sword intent was sharp and cold. Still, it did not attack them, the outsiders. After entering this foreign dimension and coming into contact with those intermingling sword intents, a scene instantly surfaced before their eyes. 2 shocking sword lights, one white and one black, intermingled as they flew over from the distant sky, hacking through the infinite devilish chi of the 9 underworlds and dark soil of the 9 underworlds, as cracks were left behind in the heavens and earth of the devilish domain. The intermingling sword lights descended here, shattering a clump of grand illusory spatial thunder, as this foreign dimension was finally formed. Yen Zhaoge knew that this was the scene from back then. He gazed towards the source of the sword light. There 2 figures, one purple and one black, intermingled. The figures suddenly halted as the figures of 2 men appeared. One of them, a black-clothed man, roared towards the heavens. At the end of the day, I still cannot defeat you. Infinite hatred, obsession, resentment and unwillingness seemed to have condensed into something tangible, transcending the boundaries of time and space, as it filled the entire heavens and earth. Opposite him was a purple-clothed youth, who stood calmly alone with a single sword. The scene ended here. Still, Yen Zhaoge was still able to clearly see the appearance of that purple-clothed youth. Chapter 1086. Yin Shiyang. Yen Zhaoge repeated this name. The encompassing emperor glanced at Yen Zhaoge, no longer having any reservations as he thought of what had happened at Star Reflecting Lake. It is rumored that the sword devil Yin Shiyang was originally a martial practitioner of the immortal court. He is also extremely talented. His talent in the way of the sword is rarely seen in the world. It's a pity that he has been a disciple of the immortal court since he was young and worshipped the immeasurable heavenly Lord. Although he managed to push open the immortal door, his comprehension of the great Tao was lacking, and his foundation was unstable. The encompassing emperor shook his head slightly. It should be said that he was delayed. If he could learn from my orthodox Taoism, his accomplishments would probably be limitless. As he spoke, he restrained his voice, not allowing it to enter Meng Wan's ears. If Meng Wan knew too much about the matter of the immortal court and the immeasurable heavenly Lord, she would naturally be able to understand that the brocade emperor had not taken her existence into consideration in discussing this matter back at Star Reflecting Lake. The brocade emperor did not mind others knowing that he had suffered cultivation deviation. But Meng Wan was different. It would be too hard to predict how the brocade emperor would react if she knew the truth. Therefore, while he spoke to Yen Zhaoge openly, The encompassing emperor still chose to use sound transmission, so that Meng Wan could not hear him. The brocade emperor said mildly from the side. While the rumored Yin Shiyang hailed from the immortal court, he is not much weaker than our orthodox Taoism's direct lineage martial practitioners at the same cultivation level. He is even stronger than many of them. Yin Zhaoge stroked his lower chin. That is indeed rather stunning. Back then, his first duel with your ancestor, Senior Yin, ended in a crushing defeat. Your ancestor felt pity for him and didn't take his life. The encompassing emperor continued. He was unresigned and challenged your ancestor a second time. In the end, he still suffered a crushing defeat. In the end, for the sake of making up for what he lacked and fighting a decisive battle with your ancestor, Yin Shiyang turned his back on the immortal court heretics and joined the 9 underworlds, becoming a devil on the spot. Hearing this, Yin Zhaoge looked thoughtfully at the encompassing emperor. The encompassing emperor nodded. The treasured light imbued with the power of faith emanating from the bodies of the immortal court martial practitioners is difficult to eradicate. All future troubles are at the whim of the immeasurable heavenly Lord. Even if you realize the truth and want to start all over again, it's just wishful thinking. However, there are no absolutes in this world. It's not impossible. I know of 2 methods. One of them is to be purified by Buddhism. In fact, it's just changing the target of worship. Hearing his words, Yin Zhaoge pondered for a moment before saying, the second is to enter the 9 underworlds and become a devil. The encompassing emperor said, it's similarly a path of no return, yet it can still be considered a choice. And so, Yin Shiyang entered the 9 underworlds, and a sword devil appeared in the world. The brocade emperor continued. After becoming a devil, Yin Shiyang's strength indeed improved greatly as his talents were not buried to the extent of being buried. Still, the sword devil was still unable to defeat the sword god in the end, as he was slain by your ancestor. Your ancestor killed the devil, and his sword showed no mercy, but he still felt pity for Yin Shiyang's talent. It's said that he once said that it would be a great regret in his life if he couldn't fight Yin Shiyang of the 3 clear lineage. Otherwise, it would be hard to tell who would win. The brocade emperor's thoughts wandered. In that era, amongst the experts who had sprung up after the great calamity, there was only one other person besides his wife, the sword emperor, who could receive such an evaluation from your ancestor in the Tao of the sword. Yin Zhaoge nodded, not saying anything as he continued forward amidst that foreign dimension. As he neared those 2 coiling sword lights, as he came into contact with that black sword light, his mind instantly shook. Sharp, icy cold, sharp, tough, brutal, unbridled. The tyrannical sword intent struggled unceasingly beneath the suppression of the jade illusory heaven-opening sword, not yielding for even a moment. Following the erosion of time, this sword intent seemed illusory, whilst also real, as it was already more of a mark, as one would no longer be able to comprehend the concept of the sword arts contained within. Still, feeling the mark within, Yin Zhaoge was still able to appreciate his former flair. Numerous scenes seemed to surface within Yin Zhaoge's mind. It was precisely the high-spirited Yin Shiyang, who had devoutly worshipped the immeasurable heavenly Lord, and whose cultivation base had transcended mortality in the immortal court. At the time when he had been most confident in his life, he had suffered a crushing defeat. That purple-clothed youth and the sword in his hand had since become Yin Shiyang's lifelong nightmare and obsession, also changing Yin Shiyang's fate. Yen, Xing, Tang. An enraged roar of indignation and indignation resounded unceasingly within Yin Zhaoge's ears. Defeat after defeat, defeat after defeat. As a martial practitioner of the immortal court, who devoutly worshipped the immeasurable heavenly Lord, he had resolutely sacrificed himself to become a devil in the end. Exhausting all methods, paying any price, no matter how many times he failed, no matter how difficult the road ahead of him was, he would never give up. He would definitely surpass that person. Chapter 1087. When talking about the devils of the 9 underworlds, Yin Zhaoge, the encompassing emperor, and the brocade emperor no longer avoided Meng Wan. Listening quietly by the side, Meng Wan could not help but sigh in admiration upon hearing the name of the primordial heavenly Lord. Back in the Eight Extremities world, while I knew how terrifying the nine underworlds were, I had not thought that they would actually be this powerful. Yin Zhaoge said, ever since ancient times, with the long passage of time, while the Tao prevails and the devils vanish most of the time, no one can deny the power of the nine underworlds. The primordial heavenly devil fought against the Jade Clear founding master for the throne. I believe he lost. Mengwan asked. Yin Zhaoge smiled. This is only natural. Therefore, the Lord of Primordial Beginning is still the Lord of Primordial Beginning, while the primordial heavenly devil can only be renamed the primordial heavenly devil. The encompassing emperor said, the primordial heaven fiend was indeed defeated, and he was even suppressed by the primordial heavenly lord of primordial beginning later on, never to emerge again. However, if he were to reappear in the world, it would probably be a scene of doomsday. If we really want to talk about doomsday, we'll have to wait until the doomsday heavenly devil is born, the brocade emperor now said leisurely. After all, he is like the lord of numinous treasure, an existence that symbolizes the transformation of all things into nothingness. Mengwan recited softly, Doomsday Heavenly Devil. Yin Zhaoge explained from the side. While it's said that there are the 12 devilish gods, one of them has never appeared in this world, and has always been missing a spot. That would be the last of the 6 ancestral devils. Ancestral fiends are all Khanate god fiends. They existed before the creation of the heaven and earth. This one is the only exception. Although he is an ancestral fiend, the ancestor of all fiends, he will be born at the end of the world, the end of the post-celestial realm. Actually, it's still unknown what his real name is. Doomsday Heavenly Devil is a name people gave him based on his power. As time passed, it became his real name. Mengwan understood, just like the founder of the Prime Clear lineage, the Lord of Numinous Treasure, who symbolizes the transformation of all living things from existence to non-existence, signifying the destruction of everything, the descent of the Dharma ending, and the disappearance of creation? The encompassing emperor nodded. Exactly. The Doomsday Heavenly Fiend is the symbol of the end of the world. The moment it descends into the world, it also represents the arrival of the true great calamity of this world. Primordial Sky Fiend and Doomsday Sky Fiend with one head and one tail are so powerful. The other 4 ancestral fiends aren't simple either, said Mengwan with a sigh. Yin Zhaoge laughed. Isn't that so? He pointed at the 9 hells where everyone was. This 9 hells is the corpse of the 2nd ancestral devil, after the primordial heaven devil, the creation heaven devil. Mengwan's gaze flickered. I remember that it was recorded in ancient texts that the vastness of the 9 underworlds was a world that existed before the great calamity and our entire human world. They were like 2 poles of existence. Such a world was actually formed from the corpse of a great devil? The brocade emperor laughed softly. While the creation heavenly devil has perished, whether or not he is powerful still depends on who killed him. The one who killed the creation heavenly devil was one of our Taoism's 3 clear grand masters, the Prime Clear Sect's Grand Master Numinous Treasure. Mengwan blinked her eyes. No wonder. His hands behind his back, the brocade emperor leisurely gazed at the darkness of the 9 underworlds beyond this foreign dimension. While it is an existence that is like a polar opposite of the human realm, the 9 underworlds is barren at the end of the day. Therefore, it would naturally try to encroach upon our great 1,000 worlds of the human realm. Perhaps this can also be said to be a form of yearning. The 9 underworlds coincides with the place where the primordial heaven devil was sealed, also preserving a final bit of vitality for the devils, in order to prevent the primordial heaven devil from breaking out of the seal, making it hard for them to exterminate the 9 underworlds. The brocade emperor swiveled his head and glanced at Yin Zhaoge. After the primordial heaven devil and the creation heavenly devil, the 3rd ancestral devil is known as the grand heavenly devil, and the 4th ancestral devil is known as the faceless heavenly devil. Mengwan was taken aback slightly. Grand heavenly devil? Yin Zhaoge said mildly. The grand heavenly devil is the devilish incarnation of the grand clear lord of Tao and virtue of one of our 3 clear grand masters, while the faceless heavenly devil is the devilish incarnation of the ancient Buddha Amitabha. The two peak bigwigs seized the position of the ancestral devil with their great wisdom and might, having already severed the fortune of the devils to a certain extent. Therefore, throughout the endless years that followed, it was mostly the Tao that prevailed and the devils that prevailed. Even if there was a time when the Tao declined and the devils prevailed, it was only for a brief moment. Therefore, other than the sixth ancestral devil, who had never truly descended into the world, there was only the fifth ancestral devil, the vast freedom heavenly devil, who had always been active in the past. Yin Zhaoge said as he shrugged. Still, that was a very long time ago. In our current era, long before the Great Calamity, ancestral devils were rarely seen. Those who wreaked havoc between the heavens and the earth were the last 6 of the 12 devilish gods, the 6 supreme devils. Yin Zhaoge's gaze fell on the 2 intermingling sword intents before him. This sword devil Yin Shiyang is the incarnation of the devil who occupies the position of aged gold of the 6 supreme devils. From becoming a devil to truly becoming a ruler of the devilish Tao, a process of growth was still required. It was just that this process of growth was extremely short for Yin Shiyang, who had already become the incarnation of a supreme devil. Still, this process had already been severed by Yin Xintong. The sword devil Yin Shiyang had become history, the encompassing emperor now said. While Yin Shiyang is dead, the supreme devils are not extinguished as they merely await their next rebirth. The devils who occupy the position of aged gold of the 5 elements were the spear devil, the saber devil, and many others. After the Great Calamity, the sword devil Yin Shiyang appeared. Afterwards, another devil of aged gold will be reborn, rising from the ashes. The so-called 6 supreme devils were the heart devils, and the devils of the 5 elements. The names of the devils of the 5 elements were not fixed. For example, the devils who occupied the position of aged gold. After the initial spear devil had perished, the saber devil had been reborn, rising and falling afterwards, until the sword devil Yin Shiyang. The devils who occupied the position of earth included the earth devil, the stone devil, and so on. The devils who occupied the position of water included the ice devil, the water devil, the fog devil, the blood devil, and so on. There were also instances where the same devils were reborn, yet not the same person. Throughout the ages, it was not just a single epoch where devils were reborn after their deaths. While many devils had perished completely, the 12 devilish gods had never been extinguished aside from the creation devil. Still, while they would be reborn after their deaths, an opportunity was required as well. A life form that was compatible with them might appear in the next instant, or it might not appear for 1,000 years, or even 10,000 years. In that case, these devils would only be able to lie dormant between life and death, quietly waiting. In the ancient texts of pre-Great Calamity times, of the 6 supreme devils, only the heart devil and the shadow devil who first occupied the position would have always existed. The other 4 have already perished many times. Yin Zhaoge looked at the encompassing emperor and the brocade emperor. The brocade emperor smiled, saying, "After the Great Calamity, there has never been any news of the heart devil and the shadow devil having perished." Yin Zhaoge looked at the 2 streaks of sword light before him. It has already been over 2,000 years since this sword devil perished. Chapter 1088. Whether it is the devil of aged metal, or the other supreme devils, they all desire to be reborn after death. The brocade emperor said mildly, "Their rebirth requires other life forms as their incarnations. It all depends on fate. A compatible incarnation might be right before their eyes, but if not, it is not impossible to wait for another 10 million years." Mengwan hesitated for a moment before asking softly, "What is considered compatible?" The brocade emperor said, "That is not certain. It depends on whether the fleshly body and the soul are compatible, having nothing to do with one's cultivation base or talent in the martial Tao. Therefore it is hard to predict." He suddenly smiled. "Even among the 4 of us here, it is hard to say whether there are any suitable ones." Hearing her father's words, Mengwan did not show any special reaction, as she just looked rather worriedly at Yin Zhaoge. Yin Zhaoge understood that she was worried about Feng Yinsheng. Her worry was not without reason. It was not just the devil of aged metal, who was one of the 6 supreme devils. There were also many experts amongst the devils beneath the 12 devilish gods who might be lying in ambush, searching for incarnations, so that they could rise from the ashes and return to the world. There were no lack of great experts amongst them. The 12 devilish gods were just too distant a concept for most people. The other devils were more direct and easier to come into contact with. Yan Zhaoge exhaled slowly, many thoughts instantly flashing through his mind. Let's not touch this place. Since it is the relic of our predecessors, it can also obstruct the 9 underworlds from corroding space, the encompassing emperor said as he looked at Yan Zhaoge and the brocade emperor. Yan Zhaoge and the brocade emperor both nodded. That makes sense. After glancing at those 2 intersecting sword lights one last time, Yan Zhaoge's group left the foreign dimension formed of sword intent and thunderbolts. As they ventured deeper into the 9 underworlds, even the brocade emperor and the encompassing emperor would have to raise their vigilance. The numerous devils of the 9 underworlds before them were getting stronger and stronger. While they still could not trouble them, as they ventured deeper, it was completely possible that they might even encounter devils that were comparable to immortal realm experts. Of the 3 of them, the brocade emperor executed the grand beginning bright emptiness form, which was illusory yet real. The encompassing emperor had studied the myriad phenomena, heavenly scripture, of the jade clear lineages, primordial heavenly scripture. It possessed boundless transformations, and was beneficial for concealment. Yan Zhaoge did not use the foundation of the peerless heavenly scripture, just circulating the first art of the dim radiant 12 arts, the concealed shadow art, and the 12th art, the peerless infinity art. He was similarly hard to find. In this way, their group was incomparably low-key. At least they didn't attract the attention of peak great demons from afar. However, it was extremely difficult to search for traces of Feng Yunxing in the 9 underworlds. Yan Zhaoge and the others could only take the risk and try to capture the 9 underworlds devils to try to find out more about Feng Yunxing, hoping that there would be a devil who had met Feng Yunxing before. The devils of the netherworld were either bloodthirsty and violent, evil and strange, or cunning and full of lies. It was not an easy task to extract useful information from their mouths. There were many methods of punishment used on humans, but their effects were limited on the devils of the 9 underworlds. Moreover, this was the territory of the 9 underworlds, so it was difficult to make a big fuss. In the end, they managed to capture a great devil that had once fought against Feng Yunxing. While the great devil had a violent temperament, it didn't lose its rationality. Finally, Yan Zhaoge and the others obtained some useful information. To a human like Feng Yunxing, who had ventured into the 9 underworlds alone, this great demon had left a deep impression on her. The wounds on his body had yet to heal, and it was impossible for him to forget his opponent. According to the information obtained from the great devil, Yan Zhaoge's group continued advancing. Boundless scorched earth suddenly appeared on the pitch-black 9 underworld soil in front of him. In the dusky world, flames spread and burned as if there was no end to it. However, even though there was a sea of fire in front of him, the world still seemed dark. The fire did not dispel the darkness and bring peace. Instead, it gave people an ominous feeling. This looks like the abode of a netherworld demon emperor, said the encompassing emperor after observing for a while. Although he said that, he didn't have the slightest intention of stopping, and directly stepped onto the scorched earth. The brocade emperor smiled, similarly not halting as he walked alongside the encompassing emperor. Looking at the scorched earth and the sea of flames, Mengwan murmured, "It is rather similar to the flame devils of that year." Yan Zhaoge said as he walked, "The flame devils that rampaged through our 8 extremities world that year were not devils of the 9 underworlds. Instead, they were spirits of fire of earlier birth. Still, they were similarly tainted with devilish intent when they were first born. Therefore, it is not wrong to call them flame devils. Tracing back to their roots, their true intent originated from an expert of pre-Great Calamity times, the Flame Devil Emperor." Yan Zhaoge explained, the Flame Devil Emperor's original title should have been the Heavenly Fire Emperor. Still, it is said that he later analyzed the devilish Tao. While he did not become a devil on the spot, He walked very deeply on that path. Therefore there is much debate about it. Mengwan nodded in understanding. Still, he is unrelated to the great devil who occupies the position of third fire of the 6 supreme devils, Yin Zhaoge said. In history, the devil of third fire once produced the fire devil, the yang devil, and the blazing devil. Our 8 extremities world that year only referred to the flame devils based on their characteristics and temperament. Hearing this, Mengwan nodded. There is probably no one in the 8 extremities world who knows about the 6 supreme devils. It is naturally impossible for them to know about the devil of third fire. Hearing her words, Yin Zhaoge could not help but smile. Mengwan smiled as well. You senior apprentice brother Yin are not included. While they were smiling, their brows were knit into a knot as they gazed at the barren, scorched earth that stretched for billions of li. They quickly arrived at the core region of this place. There were no other devils to be seen on the scorched earth, as it was like none of them dared to invade this territory. Soon, a massive devilish palace appeared before Yin Zhaoge and the others. The entire palace was completely formed of flames. It was 1,000 feet tall as the walls and pavilions of the palace were all blazing, as it instilled fear in one's heart. Senior apprentice Sister Feng, have we entered this place? Having entered alongside the Brocade Emperor, the encompassing Emperor and Yin Zhaoge, Mengwan was not afraid of the scene before her, as she appraised the devilish palace of flame that resembled a kingdom of giants. The Brocade Emperor and the encompassing Emperor exchanged glances. Why does it look like this place is all bark and no bite? The Devil Emperor is not here? Has he gone out or has he already perished? Outside the devilish domain's scorched earth, due to the inherent restrictions of devilish qi, numerous devils dared not approach. Still, it was tight on the outside while loose on the inside. Having truly arrived here, it was immediately apparent that something was wrong. Yinxing indeed did not come here for a reason. Yin Zhaoge narrowed his eyes into slits. They did not hesitate as they directly entered within. The majestic, towering devilish palace of flame was completely empty. It was only when they had arrived at the center of the devilish palace that they suddenly felt the shocking devilish qi surging to the heavens. Still, it seemed to have been suppressed as it was at the end of its path, as it was exceptionally weak. Yin Zhaoge stroked his lower chin. The aura is exactly the same as that of the devilish palace of scorched earth. It is the original owner of this place, that emperor amongst devils. Yin Zhaoge answered frankly. Instead, it is a new saber that was forged from the remains of the Rahu saber after it was destroyed. It would not be wrong to say that it is related to the exalted Rahu luminary. Still, it is unclear how much of a relationship they have. He looked thoughtfully at Gloomy, who was suppressing the flames in front of him. From the looks of it, the relationship seems to be bigger than I thought. The Brocade Emperor and the encompassing Emperor both nodded slowly. The Brocade Emperor extended a finger, lightly tapping on that clump of light. The light and shadow swayed slightly. The black flame was still weak, but the ominous darkness was rippling like water. The dark aura turned into boundless black flames and demonic qi. They were mournful and glaring, even more ferocious and domineering than the flames that made up the palace. Within the black flames and demonic qi, a human figure gradually appeared. It was the manifestation of the true intent of martial arts. Looking over, Yin Zhaoge saw that it was a black-clothed girl with a head of short hair that just reached her ears. She could not be said to be beautiful, her facial features strong and tough. A cold, stern aura emanated from her entire body as her gaze was resolute, not wavering in the least. While it was just a trace of light, a harsh killing intent still emanated from it, causing a chill to arise within one's heart. Yin Zhaoge had learnt much information from his previous visit to Kunlun Mountains, Northern High Peak's Jade Capital Crag. Yin Zhaoge had already seen the portraits of the new Kunlun 9 luminaries of the past, his grandfather included. The figure before him was none other than the exalted Rahu luminary, Jian Shanhua. Like the exalted gold luminary Yin Xintong, she was a 9 luminaries expert who was confirmed to have perished. She had left behind countless legends in her lifetime, as she was famed for being iron-blooded and tough. The exalted Rahu luminary perished even before my ancestor, the exalted gold luminary. Yin Zhaoge surveyed the devilish palace of flame before him. It looks like this is one of her battle accomplishments from back then. It is just that. Yin Zhaoge frowned. It does not feel that simple. Gazing at the silhouetted figure of the exalted Raha luminary, the encompassing emperor could only feel that this illusory figure's gaze was unwavering as it met his gaze. Carefully sensing the environment here, he suddenly said after a while, "It is indeed not simple." Yin Zhaoge pondered as well, saying, "There seems to have once been a mechanism here. While it has already dissipated, some traces of it still remain." After observing for a moment, the brocade emperor extended a palm. The force of his palm pulsing as a lot of dark devilish fire suddenly appeared out of nowhere. The devilish chi of the black fire condensed, manifesting as numerous runes and talismans. Looking at those runes, the gazes of Yin Zhaoge and the others all hardened slightly. Haha, the brocade emperor laughed lightly. So, this was a contingency prepared by the exalted Raha luminary in case she perished and intended to be reborn. The encompassing emperor slowly shook his head. She wants to borrow the profundities of rebirth of the devils of the 9 underworlds to complete her own rebirth? This is a little too. At the end of the day, the encompassing emperor did not want to speak too much on this matter. Still, Yin Zhaoge and the brocade emperor both understood what he was thinking. The exalted Raha luminary was playing with fire. Whether or not her scheme would succeed, even if it did, a single misstep would result in her becoming a devil on the spot. What was most concerning was whether she would care about becoming a devil for the sake of success. Perhaps this was just a backup plan, and it would be best to not use it. Still, the exalted Rahu luminary had truly perished over 2,000 years ago. According to the rumored personality of the exalted Rahu luminary, she would probably disdain becoming a devil in exchange for a chance at rebirth. Yin Zhaoge said, "I just fear that she might be overconfident." He carefully analyzed those dark patterns of light, murmuring, "It feels like this mechanism does not just have a chance at rebirth. It seems to have other uses as well. She is not just setting up a contingency plan for her rebirth. She also wants to make use of this chance to wrest away the power, profundities, and authority of a certain great devil." Yin Zhaoge's expression changed slightly as a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. Hearing his words, the encompassing emperor's expression changed as well. This was even more like playing with fire. Since the exalted Raha luminary had taken a liking to this power, the original great devil must have been extraordinarily strong. The brocade emperor's gaze flickered as he too was rather taken aback. The exalted Rahu luminary Jian Shunhua. Yin Zhaoge slapped his head. "I wonder if I should say that you are ambitious, already thinking of doing something even bigger after you are not dead yet." None of the new Kunlun 9 luminaries of the past had been easy to deal with. "I really have to suspect whether you were intentionally seeking death back then." Yin Zhaoge thought rather maliciously. He really felt rather exasperated at this moment. If it were any other time, he might still be in the mood to watch the show, and even give Jian Shunhua a thumbs up. Now, however, she was involved as well. The encompassing emperor frowned as he looked at the scene before him. The mechanism has already ended. What then? Chapter 1090. Whether they were concerned about Feng Yunsheng, or whether the scheme of the exalted Raha luminary, Jian Shunhua, had succeeded. In the end, everyone present was concerned. Yin Zhaoge inhaled deeply, closing his eyes. A thin screen of light appeared around his body, which gradually turned blurry, watery light. Where the watery light passed, everything seemed to turn black and white as it lost its luster. Beneath the infiltration of time that resembled water, the flow of time here seemed to be virtually stagnant. Watching this scene calmly, the brocade emperor and the encompassing emperor both nodded to themselves. With his cultivation base and age, his attainments in the Aeon Light heavenly scripture are unexpectedly brilliant. "Please lend me a hand, your majesties." Yin Zhaoge's voice was rather ethereal as it sounded fast at times while slow at others. The brocade emperor and the encompassing emperor did not hesitate, as they both made a move. With their help, Yin Zhaoge circulated the Aeon Light heavenly scripture, as time here seemed to flow in reverse. It was not truly flowing in reverse. Even if it did, It would still be hard to return to a few months, or even years ago. Still, the rippling time merged with the black fire, and devilish chi amidst space, gradually forming a silhouette as it attempted to restore the earlier scenes. Suddenly, white light flickered amidst space. Yan Zhaoge's gaze was stern, the traces left behind by Yunsheng. Accompanied by the appearance of the white light, an image gradually surfaced as it was disjointed and disjointed. A familiar face appeared before Yan Zhaoge and Mengwan. Her hair was like a waterfall that was tied up simply behind her back. Garbed in white and wielding a black saber, her gaze deep. It was none other than Feng Yunsheng. Feng Yunsheng was seated in the meditative position on the ground, the extreme yin crown emitting clear, cold radiance above her head, as it resembled the bright moon in the sky. The cold sun divine saber was placed horizontally on her knees, threads of black chi extending from it, transforming into runes that resembled chains as they entangled her body. Before Feng Yunsheng was a great black sun that hovered amidst space. Beside her, the tiny ember of fire was completely suppressed by the dim darkness, as it was unable to move. Black sunlight was emitted from the great black sun, illuminating the cold sun divine saber. Feng Yunsheng's expression was calm as her gaze was firm, as she gazed at the great black sun before her. A figure surfaced amidst the great black sun. It was none other than the exalted Rahu luminary, Jian Shanhua. Her expression was as cold and solemn as ever as she calmly stared at Feng Yunsheng, her gaze threatening. "I'm not the reincarnation of the saber soul, and you don't exist in the saber. Why is this saber so close to me?" Feng Yunsheng's tone was calm and unhurried. Jian Shanhua, who was rumored to be a man of few words, was not stingy with her words when facing Feng Yunsheng. "It is true that you are not the reincarnation of a saber soul, but a strand of your soul is sealed in the remains of the Rahu saber. You should say that this saber is the reincarnation of a portion of your soul. Although it cannot be considered your clone, it is connected to your mind, and you can wield it as if it were your own arm." The bright moonlight suppressed the pitch-black rune chains on Feng Yunsheng's body to a certain extent. But resisting these seals depended more on Feng Yunsheng's willpower. She said quietly, "Exalted Raha luminary? Although I admire Senior's demeanor in the past, I don't want to become someone else's reincarnation." What an outstanding little girl. Not only was Jian Shanhua not annoyed, a faint smile even appeared on her cold and stiff face, but this smile disappeared in a flash. The great black sun advanced, gradually about to devour Feng Yunsheng's body. Feng Yunsheng did not resist as she sat unmoving where she was, merely stabilizing her mind. Looking at the image before him, the encompassing emperor nodded slightly. While the exalted Rahu luminary has been revived, in order to ensure that she does not fall to the dark side, she is exceptionally weak. This is not a battle between an immortal realm expert and a seeing divinity martial saint. What is being compared is not external cultivation base, but internal strength. Yan Zhaoge did not speak. Feng Yunsheng's mind was strong, and her will was firm, as she was one of the few people he had ever seen who was powerful. That was a might that surpassed her age and the limits of her strength. As compared to other opponents, he was not worried about Feng Yunsheng at all. Still, Feng Yunsheng's opponent this time was no ordinary person as well. She was a woman who had left behind an awe-inspiring, iron-blooded name in history. She was a great devil who, after her death, had not only set up a method to revive herself, but also schemed against a great devil whose foundation was even deeper than hers. It was to the extent that her own death might even be a part of her plan. Also, how many could be certain that she would be able to be reborn as she wished after her death, under the precondition that she did not become a devil? Even so, Jian Shanhua had dared to gamble on it. She might not have lost to the point where she would have to stake it all on a single throw. What supported her was not her gambling nature or luck, but her firm will to the extreme. It was rumored that she had once suffered the soul-nailing needle, which was one of the 7 great tortures, alongside the cold marrow needles, without a change in expression. Facing such an opponent this time, what were Feng Yunsheng's chances of victory? In order to ensure that she does not fall to the dark side, the rebirth ritual arranged by the exalted Rahu luminary had to be borrowed. A rather interested expression appeared on the Brocade Emperor's face. Still, from the looks of it now, the outcome was not entirely within her expectations. It did not go so smoothly. The great black sun completely enveloped Feng Yunsheng. Amidst the great sun, a black pattern of an annular solar eclipse gradually appeared on Feng Yunsheng's forehead. Devilish qi vaguely circulated within her pupils as well. Still, her gaze remained clear and bright. Feng Yunsheng suddenly roared, standing up and chopping forward with the cold sun divine saber in her hand. The extreme yin crown above her head shook, pure moonlight transforming into a saber light, which broke through the great black sun. While the great black sun had vanished, the black annular solar eclipse on Feng Yunsheng's forehead still remained as dim light leapt within her pupils. The white saber light left behind a mark amidst space, resembling a passageway that led to Yin Zhaoge. Yin Zhaoge met the gaze of his lover before him, even though he knew that she could not see him. Still, Feng Yunsheng's gaze seemed to traverse through time at this moment, arriving in the present. I do not know who will be able to see this in the future. Feng Yunsheng said. I am Feng Yunsheng, a disciple of Broad Creed Mountain of the World Beyond World's southeastern Yang Heaven Territory's Royal Reed Sea. As you saw earlier, due to what happened just now, I am currently unable to fully control my body. The ritual of the exalted Rahu luminary has only been completed half as of now. There is still the other half that involves a great devil. I do not know who it is exactly, but it is definitely no ordinary devil. Next, because of her, I will be venturing deeper into the 9 underworlds. Because I am unable to fully control myself, I am unable to leave behind any clues for others to follow. The marks left behind by my right hand may be erased by my own left hand the next moment. Therefore, there is no need to try and find me. I will leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, this message may be destroyed by me as well. She said slowly. If you are willing to help, Feng Yunsheng will be endlessly grateful. Please help me pass this message to my clan, to my master Ling Yin, and to my husband Yin Zhaoge. Having lived for several decades now, I have often failed and rarely succeeded. I have caused much trouble for those related to me. Feng Yunsheng said solemnly. Still this time, I will not lose. Not for gain or loss, not for strength or weakness. It is just that I must return to see you all again. With that she smiled brightly, bright and enchanting. Zhaoge, I will definitely return. We still have not consummated our marriage. Chapter 1091. The Brocade Emperor. The encompassing emperor and Meng Wan all turned to look at Yin Zhaoge. Yin Zhaoge was in a daze as he gazed at that illusory image of light, not speaking. Within the image, Feng Yunsheng cupped her fists towards space before turning elegantly, her figure traversing through the layers of flames as she vanished from this devilish palace of flame, no longer being seen. The white light faded as the silhouette before them gradually vanished. Time was reversed as everything returned to its current state. Yin Zhaoge gazed at the empty palace, not speaking for a long time. Little friend Yin, this matter involves the life of the exalted Rahu luminary. This old man and others of the world beyond worlds will probably have to get involved. At the very least, we must report this to the 3 sovereigns. After a long time, the encompassing emperor coughed softly and said slowly, a top-notch great devil is also involved in this matter. For the proud exalted Rahu luminary to target him, this great devil must be extraordinary. While it will be difficult to continue pursuing the clues as little friend Feng says, if there is a chance, we will also attempt to enter the depths of the 9 underworlds to search. I hope to find little friend Feng as soon as possible. Yin Zhaoge's gaze flickered as he turned to look at the encompassing emperor. The old man with a ruddy complexion had a calm gaze as no ripples could be seen within it at all. Your Majesties, please get involved. The chances of success will naturally increase greatly, Yin Zhaoge said. Of course this Yin hopes to find my wife as soon as possible. Apologies for this. This Yin has always been looking forward to our wedding night. The encompassing emperor's gaze flickered slightly as he said nothing more. While he rather admired this youth before him, the matter of the exalted Rahu luminary this time had too many implications, as the encompassing emperor had no choice but to be prudent. The worst-case scenario would be Feng Yunsheng losing to Jian Shenhua. but Jian Shunhua not winning as well. The one who would benefit from this would be the great devil, who had been schemed against by Jian Shunhua. Whether it was Jian Shunhua or Feng Yunxing who became a devil, the outcome would be extremely terrible. The encompassing emperor naturally had to consider this possibility. Still, he similarly had to consider Yin Zhaoge and Broad Creed Mountain. The youth before him had too many connections. Besides the sword sovereign of Kunlun Mountain's northern high peaks Jade Capital Crag, he was actually also inextricably linked to the roving Jade Heavens. Even with the encompassing emperor who was used to all sorts of storms, he had to calm his heart now. He had to be extremely cautious. Looks like we can only stop here. The Brocade Emperor did not seem to be thinking so much, as he just looked rather regretfully at Meng Wan. I hope that your friend will be able to turn misfortune into fortune. Meng Wan looked at the empty palace, and felt a sense of loss in her heart. Hearing the Brocade Emperor's words now, she nodded saying, "Don't worry about it, Daddy. I understand. I only hope that senior apprentice Sister Feng can return safely now." Yin Zhaoge smiled. Being able to see you upon her return is undoubtedly a pleasant surprise. She should be very happy. With that, he cupped his hands towards the Brocade Emperor and the encompassing emperor. Please wait a moment. Then, Yin Zhaoge walked up to the dim darkness that was suppressing the black ember, and extended his palm. Under the circulation of the faceless devil scripture, Yin Zhaoge's entire body seemed to turn illusory. A green Buddha statue appeared above his head. It had 4 faces and 12 arms. Every face was blank, and no facial features could be seen. The gazes of the encompassing emperor and the Brocade Emperor both flickered. What an outstanding youth! His talent is peerless indeed. With their knowledge, while they were not proficient in the faceless devil scripture, they naturally knew that the faceless heavenly devil of legend actually did not have a specific external form, while possessing the true intent of no self and no form. Those who cultivated an external form of the faceless heavenly devil would still be far from being proficient in their cultivation bases. Or perhaps, the cultivators would intentionally infuse other concepts within. This was what Yin Zhaoge was currently doing. While he was projecting the profundities of the faceless devil scripture, he had no intention of falling to the dark side. The 12 arms of the green Buddha statue simultaneously extended, coming together towards the center as it suppressed and subdued that dim darkness and the ember. Then, the Buddha statue slowly descended, descending above Yin Zhaoge's head. Little friend Yin, you still have to be careful. That ember is the source of a devilish emperor's revival at the end of the day. While the encompassing emperor did not stop Yin Zhaoge, he still warned him. Yin Zhaoge smiled. Thank you for your concern, encompassing emperor. Still it is fine. He closed his eyes, the acupoints of his entire body suddenly shuddering. Seeing this, the gazes of the Brocade Emperor and the encompassing emperor both lit up. Ha! As Yin Zhaoge sat at the center of the back hall of the devilish palace of flame, his entire body suddenly glowed brightly. Streams of radiance that resembled bright starlight illuminated the surrounding area with him as their center, even penetrating through the walls of the palace formed of flames. At this moment, radiance lit up amidst the gloomy devilish domain of the 9 underworlds, resembling the morning star in the night sky at the center of blazing flames and scorched earth. All the acupoints of Yin Zhaoge's body emitted light. Now one of them suddenly dimmed and was extinguished. Soon after, a second, a third. While the light of some of his acupoints was extinguished, the light that surged from the other acupoints that were still glowing grew, increasingly dazzling as a qualitative change occurred. As the light flickered, it was like numerous stars circulated within the actual universe. Yin Zhaoge's entire aura surged along with this. He has actually ascended to the 8th level of the martial saint realm, the mid-immortal bridge stage just like this. Seeing this, the encompassing emperor sighed softly. According to the news that this old man heard, he should have only ascended the immortal bridge not long ago before his lineage's opening ceremony. Besides admiration, the gaze with which the encompassing emperor looked at Yin Zhaoge also contained pity. This was naturally because Yin Zhaoge had already heard of the immeasurable heavenly lord back at Star Reflecting Lake. The encompassing emperor shook his head as he looked at the brocade emperor, a rare look of dissatisfaction appearing within his gaze. While Yin Zhaoge's attitude towards Feng Yunxing had given him a headache, this did not affect his admiration of Yin Zhaoge's talent. The encompassing emperor felt great regret that the brocade emperor's rash actions had resulted in the destruction of an unparalleled genius of Taoism. The brocade emperor smiled as he seemed to have long since forgotten about the matter of star-reflecting lake, as he just clicked his tongue in admiration as he looked at Yin Zhaoge. Your determination is commendable. Indeed, the encompassing emperor shook his head, looking at Yin Zhaoge once more. While this was not shown on his face, the resolute aura emanating from Yin Zhaoge's body was obvious for all to see. The dissatisfaction and suppression within his heart did not transform into vexation, worry, defeat, or dispiritedness. Instead, it was like an erupting volcano as it completely transformed into a resolute will to advance unceasingly upwards. Yin Zhaoge's accumulations were incomparably abundant. Aside from major bottlenecks, there was no difficulty in his advancement at all. Still, in order to stably tread this rare path of his, he was neither hurried nor impatient as he steadily advanced one step at a time. Still at this moment he no longer suppressed himself. While refining the devilish fire had repercussions, he still suddenly strode forward. Looking at the calm youth before him, the encompassing emperor really felt a headache coming on. I admire him even more now. The brocade emperor smiled leisurely. The encompassing emperor glanced at him. He is different from you. The brocade emperor smiled. There is nothing bad about being different from me. Red Lien has a rather good impression of him. I once thought of taking him in as a son-in-law. From the looks of it now, my judgment was not bad. Chapter 1092. The brocade emperor's tone was relaxed, but it caused the encompassing emperor to glance at him again. Meanwhile, Yin Zhaoge now slowly ceased his cultivation. The starlight emitted by the acupoints of his entire body gradually retracted, returning to his body. He opened his eyes, smiling as he looked at the brocade emperor and the encompassing emperor. This Yin has been impetuous. I have incurred your ridicule. The brocade emperor and the encompassing emperor both said. It is fine. Meng Wan smiled from the side. Congratulations to senior apprentice brother Yen for advancing further in your cultivation. Junior sister Meng, you're too polite. Yin Zhaoge stood up, looking at the devilish palace of flame before him as he said, this place already has no more value. The group exited the palace constructed of flames. The encompassing emperor pondered and said, little friend Feng is being coerced by the exalted Rahu luminary into venturing deeper into the 9 underworlds. At the same time, it would be hard for him to leave behind any clues for us. If we continue forward, not only will it be hard for us to gain anything, the risk will also greatly increase. After all, there were still many great demons in the 9 underworlds. The encompassing emperor looked at Yin Zhaoge and Meng Wan. This old man means that we should return to the world beyond worlds and report this to the 3 sovereigns, asking them to make a decision and consider this matter at length. When the time comes, if we want to search the depths of the 9 underworlds again, with His Majesty the 3 sovereigns leading the way, it will be easier for us to enter deeper into the 9 underworlds. Hearing this, Yin Zhaoge nodded slowly. Thank you, encompassing emperor, for understanding this Yan's feelings. I am not someone who does not know the gravity of things. Blindly entering the 9 underworlds without any clues would be no different from sending a sheep into a tiger's den. While I am worried about my wife, it is hard for me to think of anything now. Your Majesty, your words are wise and prudent. I have no objections. Meng Wan, who was at the side, also said, we shouldn't have troubled you to this point. It's all up to you and father to decide. Junior will naturally comply. The encompassing emperor said, you are too polite, little friend Fu. I have gained a lot from my trip to the 9 underworlds this time. If not for this trip, I would not have known that the exalted Rahu luminary had actually done such a great thing. He looked at the brocade emperor who smiled. There are still some regrets in the end. Still, it is difficult for things to always go according to one's wishes. I believe that this is also fate. The gazes of Yin Zhaoge, And the encompassing emperor flickered slightly upon hearing this, as their gazes shifted between the brocade emperor and Meng Wan. The group didn't stay any longer. They left the Flame Demon Palace and tried to go back the way they came. Along the way, Yin Zhaoge paid attention to the brocade emperor's movements. Still, from the looks of things, the brocade emperor seemed to be doing as per normal. The abnormality came from the outside world. As Yin Zhaoge and the others retraced their steps, halfway through their journey away from the 9 underworlds, an intense feeling of unease suddenly arose within their hearts. In the boundless darkness, killing intent lurked everywhere. All of a sudden, a majestic wave swept over and struck them head-on. That terrifying aura seemed to surpass that of a perfected immortal expert who had already pushed open the gate of immortality. The first thought that flashed through the minds of Yin Zhaoge and the others was that while they had tried their best to keep a low profile, they had still ended up alerting even more powerful devils of the 9 underworlds. But then, a loud voice reverberated in the void. Where is Yin Tianxia's successor? This emperor can clearly sense the aura of the orthodox dim radiant 12 arts originating from that immortal artifact left behind by Yin Tianxia. Emperors of the immortal court. The encompassing emperor's expression suddenly darkened. There's more than one. Yin Zhaoge's pupils dilated slightly. Why would a sovereign of the immortal court appear in the 9 underworlds? Did you discover me and the dim radiant will by chance, or? His thoughts flashed at lightning speed as he suddenly swiveled his head to look at the brocade emperor. He saw that the brocade emperor had a calm expression on his face as he smiled. While the sovereigns of the immortal court are powerful, they are still inferior to the 3 sovereigns of my orthodox Taoism at the end of the day. While Taoistly, and I dare not say that we can win, we should still be able to hold them off for a while. Let's not get entangled in battle, and try to make use of the geography of the 9 underworlds to shake them off. The encompassing emperor shot a deep glance at the brocade emperor before saying decisively, "Let's leave first." He swept his black sleeve, bringing along Yin Zhaoge, as he fled in another direction. The brocade emperor did the same, as he brought along Meng Wan and sped away. Amidst the frenzied tides behind them, a second voice resounded. "Li Jun Fu Yunqi, must things really go to such an ugly extent? You were the one who obstructed us first. It should be this old man who finds it strange," the encompassing emperor said. "Is the immortal court going to break the agreement?" The first voice resounded. "Don't try to quibble. Yin Tianxia brought about his own destruction, and his descendants are also guilty of unforgivable crimes. This is the agreement. If you want to stop us today, do not blame this emperor for not giving you any face." The encompassing emperor said mildly, "We can only offend you then." As he said this, he did not cease in his footsteps as he transformed into a streak of light, traversing the heavy darkness of the 9 underworlds with the brocade emperor by his side. Yin Zhaoge did not mind being brought along by the encompassing emperor, as he observed the brocade emperor beside him, while looking behind him. There, roiling yellow sand had actually arisen amidst space which had previously been dim and filled with devilish qi. Waves of sand that surged to the heavens roiled unceasingly over the vast ocean that spanned 10,000 li, as they pursued Yin Zhaoge's group. Meanwhile, a phoenix soared above the ocean of sand. It was unlike the fire phoenixes that Yin Zhaoge was already used to seeing from the lineage of Phoenix Ritual Mountain's Wudong Slope in the world beyond worlds. This phoenix was shockingly an ice phoenix. It was small and petite, merely 6 feet tall if it stood upright. Its wings spread wide. It seemed inconspicuous, as it resembled a tiny white dot in the air above the ocean of sand. Still, the power emanating from it was more than 100 times greater than that of Zhuang Shun, who had been a human exalt in the past. Zhuang Shun was truly like a firefly compared to the sun and moon. In pre-Great Calamity times, there was once an Ice Phoenix Emperor, who passed down the Ice Phoenix Nirvana scripture. Yin Zhaoge's eyes narrowed into slits. In the current immortal court, there are already experts of the Ice Phoenix Nirvana scripture, who can be called sovereigns. While it is a legacy of the immortal court, it is still extraordinary. Instead, as Yin Zhaoge recalled the roiling ocean of sand, he was unable to find a matching supreme martial art. There were a few that seemed similar, yet were not completely the same. From the looks of it, it was possible that it was like the dim radiant 12 arts, a supreme martial art that had only been born after the great calamity, as it had been derived from the crystallization of the wisdom of predecessors. While the foundation of martial practitioners of the immortal court lay in the treasured light of the power of faith, there were still many outstanding geniuses amongst them at the end of the day. The two of them chased each other, fighting and moving at the same time. The encompassing emperor and the brocade emperor no longer cared about keeping a low profile and concealing their tracks. Their intense battle instantly drew the attention of the devils of the 9 underworlds, as more and more devils began approaching. Finally, a similarly terrifying aura arrived from the distance. Frenzied, evil howls resounded deafeningly as a great devil of the 9 underworlds, that was comparable to immortal realm experts, had finally been drawn over. While they had no intention of working together, the experts of the immortal court and the great devils had formlessly formed a pincer attack. A crimson stream of fire tore through the void and appeared in everyone's line of sight. Seeing this, Yen Zhaoge and the encompassing emperor were both slightly taken aback. Mars halberd. The raging sea of fire washed away the surrounding black devil chi, and in the center of the sea of fire, a god of fire, who was standing on 2 fiery dragons, appeared. It was the incarnation of Mars halberd. Engulfed in flames, the giant god wasn't surprised to see Dijiang. Instead, he was shocked to see the 2 emperors of the immortal court, heretics. The Ice Phoenix spoke in the human language. Mars halberd? We actually encountered each other in the 9 underworlds. We're destined to not return empty-handed today. He spread his wings and flew off, shaking off the brocade emperor and the others as he flew towards Mars halberd. Although Mars halberd was surprised, he was not afraid at all. He raised boundless raging fire and collided with the ice. Both sides were engaged in a fierce battle. The world was frozen for thousands of miles, but there were still flashes of fire from time to time. Meanwhile, while the brocade emperor and the encompassing emperor had lost an immortal court expert, that cunning great devil Dijiang had instead begun to target them, as he vaguely seemed to be joining forces with another expert of the immortal court. Sovereigns were sovereigns at the end of the day. Even if they hailed from the immortal court, they were still powerful to the extreme. Whether it was Mars halberd, the brocade emperor, the encompassing emperor, or that great devil Dijiang, all of them were peak experts. Still, it would not be easy for them to face a sovereign of the immortal court alone. While they hailed from the immortal court, having been able to attain their current cultivation bases, they were definitely outstanding figures themselves. Still, as compared to the brocade emperor, the encompassing emperor and the others, the primary target of this sovereign of the immortal court was still Yen Zhaoge and the dim radiant wheel. Observing the battle situation, Yen Zhaoge was fearless in the face of danger, as he suddenly approached the battlefield along with Meng Wan. A grand illusory spatial thunder that had just shattered exploded, causing the surrounding space to distort as a result. Yen Zhaoge made use of this opportunity to directly shoot into that chaotic space, as its destructive power had weakened following the explosion of the thunderbolt, and its influence on space had yet to vanish. Red light vaguely appeared within his pupils as he secretly circulated the immortal trapping sword, traversing the chaotic turbulent flows of space as he speedily left the battlefield. A cold snort resounded behind him, as all-encompassing yellow sand swept over in hot pursuit. Yet, devilish intent that surged to the heavens manifested amidst space, surrounding him from all directions. That great devil Dijiang's wish was fulfilled as even more peak experts of the 9 underworlds finally arrived. The battle instantly grew more chaotic, as that sovereign of the immortal court's movements were delayed slightly, allowing Yen Zhaoge and Meng Wan to vanish from the spot. Drifting amidst chaotic space, when the scenery before Yen Zhaoge and Meng Wan regained normal, they were finally far away from the battlefield from earlier. Feeling the devilish chi fluctuations in the devilish domain of the 9 underworlds, Yen Zhaoge turned and gazed in a certain direction. There, streams of light could still be vaguely seen flickering as the radiance of death lit up. Mengwan said softly. Thank you, Senior Apprentice Brother Yen, for saving me. No need to stand on ceremony. Yin Zhaoge answered casually as he gazed in that direction. Mengwan hesitated for a moment before asking. Senior Apprentice Brother Yen, what exactly is father? Yin Zhaoge pondered for a moment before telling her about the Brocade Emperor's situation and his earlier guess. Even though she had already been mentally prepared, Mengwan was still taken aback upon hearing this. Want to kill me and my sister? This is only my guess at the moment. Still, it should not be wrong. It might even be within these 9 underworlds that he is most likely to make a move, Yin Zhaoge said in a heavy tone. While it is said that even a vicious tiger will not eat its cubs, this tiger is currently not very normal. He paused for a moment before adding, apart from you, I might also be his target. Making a move within the 9 underworlds would be completely undetectable, and everything could be pushed to the devils of the 9 underworlds. That would be perfect. Hearing his words, Mengwan asked softly, if we leave the encompassing emperor's line of sight now, wouldn't it be more convenient for us to make a move? Yin Zhaoge shrugged. There is no helping it. It can be said that I am burdening you. Those 2 sovereigns of the immortal court are targeting me. In terms of direct threat, they are even greater than your father, as they definitely want to make things difficult for me. Also, the Brocade Emperor's current thoughts are still rather unpredictable. What are you saying, Senior Apprentice Brother Yen? How could it be you burdening me? If not for you, I would probably have died on the spot in that situation just now even if father had not acted, Mengwan said. It is I who is burdening you. Her thoughts were sharp as she immediately thought of more things after knowing the whole story. Even if we are separated, father should still have a way to find me. If you bring me along, you will still be found. Yin Zhaoge continued fleeing with her as he said, if Yunxing is able to see you on the day she returns, she will probably be exceptionally happy and overjoyed. Mengwan said softly, Senior Apprentice Brother Yen, you can give Senior Apprentice Sister Feng a lot. Chapter 1094. The Brocade Emperor Fu Yunqi's handsome figure was indistinctly visible amidst the endless purple qi. When he used the grand beginning bright emptiness body, it was extremely convenient for him to move through the void. Seeing this scene, Mengwan's emotions were instead calm and peaceful. Looking at Yin Zhaoge, she continued what she had not been able to finish earlier. With my understanding of Senior Apprentice Sister Feng, let's first not talk about what she likes, but she definitely wouldn't like you bearing the risk for her sake. While I like to take risks, I won't do things that throw my life away. Since I do things, I have confidence in them. It is the same this time. Yin Zhaoge gazed at the Brocade Emperor, who had appeared amidst the purple qi cloud sea. Probably? He looked first at the Brocade Emperor, and then at the distant battlefield. This Yan's luck is not bad that I was able to escape death and see your majesty again. I just wonder how the encompassing emperor is doing? While the Brocade Emperor's aura was currently slightly weak, his expression was as per usual, as there was even a hint of a genial smile on his face, as if he had not experienced that great battle just now. Seeing Yin Zhaoge and Mengwan, he smiled and said, the situation is chaotic, and everyone is restraining each other. There are fewer dangers. Since you've already escaped, there's no need for Daoist Li to stay there and tangle with the Immortal Court's people. As long as you're careful, there'll be a chance for you to escape. Yin Zhaoge raised his eyebrows. The one in trouble is Mars Halbert? While it was a question, Yin Zhaoge's tone was very certain. Judging from the words of the Emperor of the Immortal Court, who had transformed into an ice phoenix, it seemed that the Immortal Court also wanted to capture Mars Halbert. While the reason was unclear, Yin Zhaoge guessed that it was most likely related to the exalted fire. Now that Yin Zhaoge and the dim radiant wheel had escaped, their attention would naturally be placed on Mars Halbert. On the other hand, the Sunluo Emperor was not taken seriously. The opponents they needed to be careful of were the demons of the 9 underworlds. However, Mars Halbert was targeted by 2 emperors of the Immortal Court, and he was entangled by the 9 nether great devils, which were hard to tell if he was a friend or foe. This trip was more than troublesome. If he was not careful enough, he would be buried in the 9 nether. Mars Halberd challenged me again. I'd like to have a fight with him, after visiting my little friend Feng, and getting out of the 9 underworlds. The Brocade Emperor answered mildly. Who would have thought that the immortal court's intervention would actually result in the current situation? Chapter 1095. The massive black Buddha resembled the heavenly tribulation of the end of the world, as he sat in the meditative position at the center of the 9 underworlds. It was just that no tranquil Zen intent could be seen in this Buddha at all, as there was only devilish chi that seemed capable of driving one mad. As I have heard, devilish salvation for all life forms. Yin Zhaoge's voice resounded from the mouth of the Buddha, different from usual as it emanated a fierce, evil intent. Seeing that jet black Buddha with the reverse swastika character on its forehead, chest and palm, the Brocade Emperor was rather taken aback. You have actually attained such a high level of attainment in the faceless devilish scripture? I have never seen you devolve into the devilish Tao in the least. He clicked his tongue in wonder. Is it because you have concealed it too well, or is your mind so resolute? Being able to cultivate in the faceless devilish scripture to such a level without falling to the devil is really rare. The jet black Buddha said. The thoughts of the Brocade Emperor are too hard to guess now. This yin has no choice but to be careful. If I had not been prepared, I really would not have dared to enter the 9 underworlds with you. After all, you can kill and bury anyone you want here. It is the same now, killing and burying anyone you want. The Brocade Emperor could not help but smile, showing no mercy whatsoever. The massive Taiji diagram obscured the heavens and concealed the sun, as it enveloped the heavens and earth of the 9 underworlds, suppressing all life forms to the point of returning to the primordial yin and yang. The jet black Buddha raised its palms together. The reverse swastika, character rotating as the boundless devilish sea, vowed never to turn back, forcibly blocking the Brocade Emperor's Taiji yin-yang palm. Yin Zhaoge had not spent much time on the faceless devilish scripture. Under normal circumstances, it would indeed be impossible for him to attain such attainments. Yet this was the 9 underworlds. Meanwhile, the foundation of Yin Zhaoge's martial arts was the peerless heavenly scripture, extinguishing all things, creating all things, encompassing all things. This was the supreme scripture that was most proficient in containing and deriving other martial arts. Within Yin Zhaoge's body, every single acupoint manifested the phenomenon of infinite chaos. Then boundless devilish chi was drawn into his body from the 9 underworlds of the outside world, transforming into numerous jet black Buddhas. The Buddhas chanted, the devils roared. Yin Zhaoge merged all of his true essence with the devilish chi at this moment, relying on peerless infinity to guard his foundation, before manifesting the form of the faceless heavenly devil. This was a technique that could only be used in the 9 nether. Under the boundless demonic aura, the black Buddha became more and more solemn, but also more and more evil. Although you can gather devil chi to protect your body here, and manifest the body of the devil Buddha, it's just a facade. The Brocade Emperor said mildly. A late immortal bridge martial saint, or even a human immortal who specializes in the faceless devilish scripture, might not be able to defeat you in your normal state. Now you've given up the advantage that you've always had, and changed your mind to wholeheartedly activate the faceless demon scripture. You're buying the casket and returning the pearls. The terrifying Taiji diagram kept pressing down, and the reverse swastika on the pitch-black Buddha's body gradually stopped spinning. The gigantic body of the Buddha began to sway incessantly, and pieces of it began to fall off rapidly. A human immortal who specializes in the faceless demon scripture is naturally unable to defeat me, even in the 9 underworlds. As if confirming his words, the jet black Buddha manifested by Yin Zhaoge showed signs of shattering in the blink of an eye. The jet black Buddha said, while this yin has always been arrogant, I still know my own limitations at the very least. If I thought that I could resist the Brocade Emperor just like this, it would not be an insult to you. Instead, it would be me seeking my own humiliation. So, you were waiting for this grand illusory spatial thunder? The Brocade Emperor asked mildly. Because Yin Zhaoge had gathered boundless devilish chi, the devilish chi of the surrounding 9 underworlds was drawn over as well. Some things even further away were drawn over as well. The Brocade Emperor's words had yet to land when a strange light of thunder suddenly flickered amidst the dense devilish chi in the darkness of the horizon. The next moment, a clump of thunder that resembled a crystal appeared within their field of vision. As that light of thunder flickered, there were many densely packed spatial folds within the clump of light, which were stacked together in a shocking manner. The layers of thunder light were refracted and transmitted, resembling countless layers of light stacking on top of one another, as they finally came together to form a thundercloud that resembled a crystal. This crystal was incomparably massive, as it seemed only slightly smaller than the Devil Buddha that Yin Zhaoge had transformed into. It was precisely a thundercloud formed of grand illusory spatial thunder, of the 9 heavenly immortal thunders, that had been stacked to a certain extent. When Yin Zhaoge and the others had first entered the 9 underworlds, the foreign dimension formed of those 2 streaks of sword light had been formed precisely because of this thundercloud. It was just that the thundercloud had drifted and left its original location afterwards. Still, because that great devil Dijiang, who also possessed grand illusory spatial thunder, had been active in this region earlier, the thunderbolts had attracted one another as they had gradually drawn this thundercloud closer. Now, as Yin Zhaoge gathered devilish chi, affecting the circulation of devilish chi in the surroundings, the thundercloud formed of this grand illusory spatial thunder was drawn over to the vicinity of Yin Zhaoge and the Brocade Emperor. If such an oceanic amount of grand illusory spatial thunder was detonated, it would be sufficient to completely shatter the surrounding 9 underworld space. Even if a true immortal was swept within, even if he could withstand it, he would still be sent to who knows where by the chaotic flows of space. Yin Zhaoge had naturally noticed that clump of grand illusory spatial thunder. But the Brocade Emperor had noticed it as well. He had long since been prepared for it, as he casually suppressed the pitch-black Buddha with one hand, while lightly beckoning towards that thundercloud with the other. The supreme martial arts of the grand beginning bright emptiness form could not only be used for protection. As the Brocade Emperor beckoned, space changed as that thundercloud was instantly locked in place, no longer approaching. Now, however, the pitch-black Buddha that seemed on the verge of collapse, and on the verge of collapse suddenly chanted once more. Thus I have heard devilish salvation of all life. The Brocade Emperor, who had always been calm, as usual suddenly changed his expression at this moment. It was as if something had exploded at the bottom of his heart. Hearts will thunder. The Brocade Emperor blurted out. It was precisely another type of divine thunder, of the 9 heavenly immortal thunders, alongside grand illusory spatial thunder. The strangest thunderbolt between the heavens and the earth. Hearts will thunder. Grand illusory spatial thunder was merely a pretense. Hearts will thunder was the true trump card that Yin Zhaoge had prepared to deal with the Brocade Emperor suddenly falling out with him. While it was called thunderbolts, there was no form of thunderbolts to be seen. No traces of this thunder could be seen amidst the 4 seas and 5 lakes. Only directly resounding at the bottom of one's heart, as the thoughts of one's heart transformed into thunderbolts to explode. The difficulty in using it against an enemy lay in how to induce the eruption of their heart thunder. It was fine if it did not explode. So long as it originated from the heart, external forces would be hard to defend against, as one's cultivation base would be all for show. It all depended on whether one could subdue the heart devils that had suddenly been triggered. Yin Zhaoge had given up on his original advantage and forcibly drawn in devilish chi to temporarily raise his cultivation base precisely so that this thunderbolt would explode within the Brocade Emperor's heart. Chapter 1096. The Brocade Emperor stumbled backwards, no longer able to suppress the pitch-black Buddha that Yin Zhaoge had transformed into. He knit his brows tightly as black and white light appeared on his face, the changes occurring multiple times in an instant. His soul, which had already been unstable in the first place, seemed about to be ripped apart at this moment. Hearts will thunder exploded within his heart, triggering his own heart devil. The level of one's cultivation base was no longer important now, as it all depended on one's mental state to subdue the devil within. The Brocade Emperor's current problem was caused by cultivation deviation. Now it was even worse. Even though he had already pushed open the door to immortality for 1,000 years, he was still having a hard time now. Yen Zhaoge said calmly, "You should take it easy, Your Majesty. This is the 9 underworlds at the end of the day, and the heart devil is always present in this world." The inner demons he was talking about were not the inner demons of a martial artist's cultivation. Instead, it was one of the 12 devilish gods, the heart devil of the 6 supreme devils, one of the strongest devils in the universe. It had always existed since its birth, and was destined not to be completely exterminated. As long as there were still sentient life forms in this world, the heart devil had the possibility of being reborn. From this alone, it was even more terrifying and difficult to deal with than the 6 ancestral devils. It was an existence that could only be suppressed, not exterminated. Unless all life forms perished together, the heart devil would never die. No one knew if the heart devil was currently in the 9 underworlds. Still, if it was in the 9 underworlds, with the Brocade Emperor's cultivation deviation as a true immortal, the devil within rampaging, it might alarm the ancestral source of all the heart devils of this world. The Brocade Emperor's mind was unstable as he often did shocking things, different from how he usually was. Still, whether it was his emotional side or his emotionless side, he would not be happy to see that great devil descend before him. Gazing at Yen Zhaoge, he did not continue attacking. He flicked his sleeve, a large flag appearing as it unfurled. That flag had the grand commencement heaven unity chi as its pole, and the grand beginning bright emptiness formless as its face. Streams of plain-colored cloud chi wreathed the flag, as a huge taiji diagram of yin and yang appeared on its lacquer surface, which rotated on its own. As the flag fluttered, a majestic power manifested as it virtually turned the devilish domain before it back to earlier heaven. That majestic scene was like the difference between the immortal realm and the human realm as one, causing one to be unable to approach it. Even sacred artifact kings like the extreme Yang seal and the extreme Yin crown were unable to compare to it. The Grand Longevity Banner was also in the form of a banner. Although its foundation and concept were not much inferior, the quality of the weapon itself was a notch lower. And this notch was like an insurmountable chasm. This was the Brocade Emperor's immortal artifact. In his battle with Mars Halberd that year, the Brocade Emperor had been at a disadvantage, as he had not been able to defeat that opponent who had dominated the world thousands of years ago. After that, he took out the 4 Grands earlier heaven flag, and turned defeat into victory. In the end he defeated Mars Halberd and won the match. At this moment, the great banner fluttered, enveloping the heavens and earth as it protected the Brocade Emperor beneath it. The Brocade Emperor sat in the meditative position, his eyes closed as he stabilized his mind and suppressed his inner demons. To Emperor Saint to the his to still, he to the Emperor who to. With the 4 Grands earlier heaven flag protecting him, he would not be able to do anything to the Brocade Emperor. Chun into it to the Emperor. He Emperor into a Buddha. Hu and he, and to he, to. Now that the Brocade Emperor was unable to continue attacking, Yen Zhaoge had achieved his initial goal. The pitch-black Buddha vanished from the devilish domain of the 9 underworlds, streams of devilish qi dissipating as Yen Zhaoge's figure reappeared. He did not relax. Now was far from the time to relax. Having lost the obstruction of the Brocade Emperor, that thundercloud of grand illusory spatial thunder, which he had drawn over, instantly approached once more. Still, having been suppressed by the Brocade Emperor's grand beginning bright emptiness form earlier, the Brocade Emperor had suddenly retreated after suffering the heart's will thunder. As a result, that thundercloud was affected as it instantly showed signs of exploding. Yen Zhaoge grabbed Meng Wan and fled into the distance. Still, the grand illusory spatial thunder had already exploded. While the thundercloud did not shatter completely, the spatial folds which had originally folded and shrunk together now expanded outwards layer by layer. In an instant, layer after layer of the void world, 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside, continued to expand, unfolding like ripples on water, seemingly endless. The surrounding space turned chaotic. Even with Yin Zhaoge's proficiency in the immortal trapping sword manual, he could only barely withstand it now. Seated beneath the 4 Grands earlier heaven flag, the Brocade Emperor's eyes were still closed as he relied solely on his immortal artifact to protect himself. Even as he was assailed by the multiple explosions of grand illusory spatial thunder, he was still shaken, as he could only barely remain where he was. Yin Zhaoge similarly stabilized his footing where he was. Otherwise, it was unknown where he and Meng Wan would be swept away to. There seemed to be no end to the explosions of the void spatial thunder. It was endless. Yin Zhaoge, however, did not mind it. As time passed, the Brocade Emperor might be able to stabilize his mind and suppress his restless inner demons, regaining his strength. Still, as long as he had the Heart's Will thunder within the 9 underworlds, Yin Zhaoge would be able to protect himself. With the protection of the 4 Grands earlier heaven flag, the threat that the Heart's Will thunder posed to the Brocade Emperor was greatly reduced. Still, it was still very hard for him to withstand this power that emanated from within. After all, the root cause was his own soul, which was unstable in the first place. It was just that besides the Brocade Emperor, there were still many other threats in the 9 underworlds at the end of the day. The shockwaves caused by their clash, as well as the disturbances caused by the grand illusory spatial thunder, would definitely alarm the devils of the 9 underworlds. The movements of those 2 sovereigns of the immortal court in the distance were also of concern. Yin Zhaoge stabilized his figure amidst the numerous spatial folds caused by the grand illusory spatial thunder, also attempting to determine his direction. The numerous spatial folds that expanded into the surroundings ripped apart the original heavens and earth of the 9 underworlds, forming numerous spatial crevices that led to various places in all directions. Only the heavens knew where each of them ended. Still, that thundercloud of grand illusory spatial thunder had not completely exploded at the end of the day. Therefore, as time passed, the chaotic flows amidst space slowly weakened, gradually calming down. Still, Yin Zhaoge's heart suddenly jolted as he gazed at one of the spatial crevices. There a powerful aura suddenly surged from within. A figure slowly flew out from the distorted spatial crevice. It was a youth who could still be considered handsome. He was dressed in purple, his skin pale as he looked lazy, seemingly unable to rouse his spirit towards anything at all. As he struggled out of the spatial crevice and scanned the scene before him, his gaze suddenly lit up as he became spirited. It's a small world indeed. This youth sighed emotionally. It was none other than the upper exalt who had entered the 9 underworlds earlier, Chen Qianhua. Yin Zhaoge could clearly feel a powerful aura emanating from him that seemed comparable to that of the Brocade Emperor and the encompassing Emperor. In this 9 underworlds and not a lower world, the upper exalt was the upper exalt, that most powerful martial saint who presided arrogantly over the world beyond worlds. Chapter 1097. 10th level martial saints, human immortals, were also known as human exalts. Chen Qianhua was probably the most deserving of the title of a supreme being in the world at the moment. Still, looking at this upper exalt, Yin Zhaoge could only feel disappointed. He put a hand to his forehead. As the old saying goes, 1,000 cups are not enough when drinking with a bosom friend. Still, Yin Zhaoge shook his head looking at Chen Qianhua. Still, if we are not on the same page, even half a sentence is too much. Chen Qianhua first appraised the Brocade Emperor curiously. The Brocade Emperor was still seated in meditation, seemingly not having sensed Chen Qianhua's arrival at all. Huh. Chen Qianhua clicked his tongue before turning away to look at Yin Zhaoge again, smiling. You have really gone to a lot of trouble for the Brocade Emperor. Yin Zhaoge chortled. It feels like you are even more worried than I am. No. Chen Qianhua shook his head repeatedly. That was before. He gazed at Yin Zhaoge. Now I feel that you are far more interesting than him. Yin Zhaoge raised his brows slightly as Chen Qianhua hurriedly said. Before this, I hoped that the Brocade Emperor would always remain in his current state. As for you and most of the others, you probably hoped that he would not be like this anymore. Chen Qianhua smiled. Still, it is hard to say what he will be like now. Will he be affectionate or heartless? I believe that different people like you all have different plans. As for your plans, Chen Qianhua's gaze shifted between Yan Zhaoge and Meng Wan. From the looks of it, you do not wish to see a heartless and heartless brocade emperor? Yan Zhaoge narrowed his eyes into slits, light flickering within them. From your words, could it be that you want to help the brocade emperor walk the unfeeling path? Chen Qianhua nodded matter-of-factly, of course. Chen Qianhua was not concerned about which path the brocade emperor walked at all. As he had said, the opponent he was currently interested in was Yan Zhaoge, and not the brocade emperor. When he was interested in the brocade emperor, he would oppose him. When the brocade emperor wanted to break free of his current split soul state, Chen Qianhua would try to stop him from maintaining his current state. Still, when he felt that Yan Zhaoge was more interesting than the brocade emperor, he would turn to help the brocade emperor, whose unfeeling side was gradually gaining the upper hand, going against Yan Zhaoge. At this moment, the brocade emperor resembled the chessboard that he was playing against Yan Zhaoge on. Chen Qianhua looked at a true immortal emperor in such a manner. Rather than being arrogant, it would be more accurate to say that he was crazy. So the person I want to kill now is not you. Chen Qianhua looked at Meng Wan. It is this little girl. After killing her and then Fu Ting, the brocade emperor will be able to stably walk the unfeeling path. Are you going to protect her? What do you plan to do? Chen Qianhua appeared to be in rare high spirits as his gaze shifted between Yan Zhaoge and Meng Wan before he suddenly laughed. Hearts will thunder is useless against me. He was not like the brocade emperor, who had suffered cultivation deviation. His soul having split apart as a problem had arisen in his mind. Chen Qianhua's thoughts and actions were all based on his nature. Externally speaking, there were no flaws in his divine soul. If one wanted to forcibly trigger his heart devil with hearts will thunder, it would have to be executed by someone whose cultivation base was clearly higher than his. Yan Zhaoge deeply doubted whether such a person might have a heart devil at all. What he was more concerned about was that Chen Qianhua had only arrived here, due to the chaotic flows of space, after the brocade emperor's mental state had already gradually stabilized. He had actually been able to see through the brocade emperor's current situation with a single glance, as it had been caused by hearts will thunder. Yan Zhaoge met Chen Qianhua's gaze, his heart jolting as he vaguely sensed that something was amiss. While he was pondering, Chen Qianhua was already smiling as he strode over towards him and Meng Wan. Yan Zhaoge, I won't kill you. How boring would this world be without you? Come, let me see how you are prepared to protect this little girl. Give me some more surprises. Before his words had landed, he raised a hand, a cyclic heavenly seal descending towards Meng Wan's head. The current Chen Qianhua was completely different from when he had fought in the Eight Extremities world back then. As the cyclic heavenly seal descended, the heavens and the earth instantly overturned. Looking calmly at Chen Qianhua, Yan Zhaoge smacked his lips. Let's not talk about me first. Someone else will give you a surprise. At the same time, the brocade emperor's voice suddenly resounded. Little friend Chen, you might be stretching your hand a little too far. Chen Qianhua raised his brows, looking at the brocade emperor. If I am not wrong, your two daughters just need to vanish from this world. You do not have to personally take action. The brocade emperor Fu Yunqi, who had been meditating with his eyes closed earlier, had already reopened his eyes now. That has nothing to do with you. Amidst his words, he suddenly arrived before Chen Qianhua, raising his palm and blocking Chen Qianhua's cyclic heavenly seal. The Taiji Yin-Yang palm of the Grand Clear Direct lineage clashed against the cyclic heavenly seal of the Jade Clear Direct lineage. Chen Qianhua's palm lightened as he was jolted into the air by the brocade emperor. Brocade emperor, you are indeed much more interesting than before. Chen Qianhua's expression did not change as he looked at the brocade emperor through the corner of his eyes. If you truly walk the unfeeling and unfeeling path, you would only care about the outcome, not feeling dissatisfied that someone has overstepped their bounds. As he said this, he raised his other hand as well, combining the earth overturning seal with the cyclic heavenly seal. His fist intent as great as the great earth of the sovereign heavens pressed down on the Taiji diagram down below. As the three palms clashed, space instantly distorted as a long crack was ripped apart amidst space, extending far into the distance with no end in sight. The nearby 9 underworlds seemed to have been ripped into 2 at this instant. I originally thought that you had already gradually decided on your path. From the looks of it now, however, you are still wavering. Chen Qianhua suddenly broke into laughter. Could this be the effect of the heart's will thunder? He laughed so hard that he bent over backwards, swiveling his head to look at Yin Zhaoge. Originally already gradually tilting towards one side, it has now reverted to a state where the 2 sides are clashing non-stop. Isn't this what you hate the most? Is this a gain or a loss to you? Crossing his arms before his chest, Yin Zhaoge smiled relaxedly. It is still too early to say this now. The Brocade Emperor said mildly. Little friend Chen talks too much. The Taiji diagram on his palm rotated, sucking in Chen Qianhua's palms. Then, he raised his other hand, striking down towards Chen Qianhua. As Yin Zhaoge said, Brocade Emperor, you have truly given me a pleasant surprise. Chen Qianhua seemed to have long since predicted this, as his figure suddenly turned illusory, as he executed the grand beginning bright emptiness form, breaking free of the suction force of the Brocade Emperor's palm. The Brocade Emperor did not speak. Still, he formed a fist seal with his other hand, executing the grand beginning bright emptiness form, as he too executed the supreme martial art of the grand beginning bright emptiness form. Affected by this, Chen Qianhua's figure instantly turned from illusory to corporeal once more. Still, he leapt, instead taking the initiative to clash with the Brocade Emperor, who was also executing the grand beginning bright emptiness form. Strange laughter resounded as Chen Qianhua simultaneously struck out with his palms, golden flames suddenly surging. Where those flames passed, they shockingly burned through the bright emptiness grand beginning. Earlier heavenly fire essence? Earlier heavenly fire divine palm? The Brocade Emperor was rather taken aback. The earlier heavenly fire divine palm was a peak martial art of pre-great calamity times. It was said that it originated from Taoist Luya, a bigwig of the investiture of the gods era. Chapter 1098. While the Brocade Emperor was slightly astonished that Chen Qianhua was even proficient in a long-lost martial art, like the connately fire divine palm. Thinking of how Chen Qianhua had always been well-read, he felt at ease. He stood there unmoving. The essence of the connately fire was strong, but when it was used by someone who had not reached the realm of immortals, it could not do anything to him who had become a true immortal. Indeed, the golden flames that incinerated the heavens and extinguished the earth, and pierced through the grand beginning's body, were unable to harm the Brocade Emperor in the slightest. The body of a true immortal was flawless and immeasurable. It was difficult for the power of mortals to harm it. It was definitely not as simple as it sounded. Still, Chen Qianhua had long since anticipated this, as he had already arrived behind the Brocade Emperor, in a flash, before punching towards the back of his neck. The Fistenten's true essence manifested, transforming into a scepter which swung towards the Brocade Emperor. The connately fire essence was just a pretense. This was his true killing move. As Yin Zhaoge watched this battle from the side, his pupils dilated slightly. As a martial saint, Chen Qianhua actually seemed to be even swifter than the Brocade Emperor, who was a true immortal. It wasn't that his movements were faster, but it was as if he had countered the enemy first and seized the initiative. In the vast ocean world that year, Yin Zhaoge had once seen a martial art known as the Spirit Rhino Palm. They looked similar, but in reality, they were worlds apart. It must be known that the Brocade Emperor's cultivation base was above Chen Qianhua's, as the gap between the human immortal and immortal realms was like a heavenly chasm. If Chen Qianhua had been able to predict the future when clashing with the Brocade Emperor, what would it be like when he clashed with experts of the same cultivation level, or even those whose cultivation bases were lower than his? While a great deal of bewildering fog enveloped this person, Yin Zhaoge instead gradually felt as though the clouds before his eyes were dispelled, and the sun could be seen. The Brocade Emperor did not seem all that surprised by Chen Qianhua's miraculous ability to predict the future. However, when he felt the walking stick coming at him from behind, his gaze turned slightly cold. While the Brocade Emperor would not be injured by this, he would be sent stumbling back a few steps, inevitably losing face. More importantly, this crutch technique was also a supreme martial art of the Grand Clear Direct lineage. Besides the grand beginning bright emptiness form, streams of plain-colored cloud chi circulated around the Brocade Emperor, as he executed the grand plainness immeasurable body as well. While Chen Qianhua was unable to break through the leakless body of a true immortal, an exalted emperor would also be hard-pressed to defeat him. Both sides were currently locked in a stalemate, if they just dragged things on. While Chen Qianhua's true essence was vigorous and thick, it was still rather lacking compared to the Brocade Emperor, who had already pushed open the door to immortality. His gaze flickered slightly as a shocking radiance suddenly erupted from within. A miraculous, formless force condensed into a tangible radiance, which surged from Chen Qianhua's eyes and landed on the Brocade Emperor. Hearts will thunder. Hearts will heavenly scripture, ha! The Brocade Emperor smiled coldly. Chen Qianhua had unleashed the power of the hearts will heavenly scripture of the later heaven six scriptures, of the primordial heavenly scriptures, to the maximum, as he struck out with his full power. The hearts will heavenly scripture narrated the Tao of later heaven's mind and spirit. As Chen Qianhua executed it now, it was like Yin Zhaoge's earlier attack of hearts will thunder had been aimed at the Brocade Emperor's current weakness. Still, how experienced was the Brocade Emperor? Having suffered greatly from hearts will thunder earlier, having already sensed that Chen Qianhua was proficient in the hearts will heavenly scripture, he had been guarding against this move. Seeing Chen Qianhua unleash a full-powered attack with the hearts will heavenly scripture, the Brocade Emperor did not retreat, as he instead rampantly exerted more force, continuing to fiercely attack Chen Qianhua with a grand commencement divine finger. As Chen Qianhua wielded the hearts will heavenly scripture with all his might, the earlier combination of the later heaven six scriptures lost its balance, the foundation of the world rapidly weakening as his defenses weakened as well. Chapter 1099. Chen Qianhua imitated Yin Zhaoge's earlier method of dealing with the Brocade Emperor. True immortals are leakless. It is difficult for mortals to injure them. It was rare for the Brocade Emperor to have such a flaw. Chen Qianhua naturally made use of it. Still, what sort of figure was the Brocade Emperor? He had long since been prepared for this, as he instead retaliated mightily. Chen Qianhua's eyes flickered slightly. He did not seem surprised. Because he had used the hearts will heavenly scripture to attack, the foundation of the world formed of the combined later heaven six scriptures had weakened as he was very hard-pressed to resist the Brocade Emperor's grand commencement divine finger like before. However, he did not panic and continued to chant. Immediately, the boundless demonic qi in the nine underworlds started to gather around Chen Qianhua. The image of a jet-black demon god appeared between heaven and earth. It was like an ancient demonic divine mountain that had stood since the ancient times, unmoving and indestructible. The origin of the nine underworlds' demon domain was one of the 12 devilish gods and devils, the second ancestor devil, creation heavenly devil. Although he had perished, his demonic arts had been passed down. His descendants had studied his power and intent and created it. It was called the Creation Demon Scripture. The classics recorded 8 kinds of demonic supreme arts, which were the 8 trigrams of heaven, earth, wind, thunder, water, fire, mountain, and lake. Thus, they were also known as the 8 absolutes of creation. Among them, the image of Gen Mountain corresponded to an absolute art called immovable heavenly demon body. It was one of the top defensive arts of the demonic path. At this moment, Chen Qianhua was displaying this ultimate technique. The 9 underworlds was formed from the corpse of the fortune creation heavenly demon. Using this ultimate art in the 9 underworlds would gather endless demonic qi to strengthen one's defense. Even if it was inferior to the foundation of the world formed from the jade clear lineage's later heaven six scriptures, it could still be said to be impregnable. The Brocade Emperor's grand commencement divine finger was truly powerful as it broke through the grand beginning bright emptiness form, the twin qis of red and bright, and the palm power of the cyclic heavenly seal. Then, He pierced through the weakened foundation of the world and finally attacked the unmovable heavenly demon body. However, under the continuous wear and tear of the layers of defense, it was like an arrow at the end of its flight. While cracks appeared on the massive statue of the devilish god that stood as firm as a mountain, it had not been shattered by the Brocade Emperor's finger at the end of the day. Now, Chen Qianhua's attack with the Heart's Will heavenly scripture also began to take effect on the Brocade Emperor. As long as the Brocade Emperor's mind was thrown into chaos once more, Chen Qianhua would have a chance to gain the upper hand. He naturally knew that with the Brocade Emperor's abilities, just using the Heart's Will heavenly scripture alone would only result in a situation where both sides would be heavily injured. This sudden move of the motionless demon body, using defense as offense, was the key to victory. Still, the current Brocade Emperor was indeed very capable of giving others pleasant surprises. Suddenly, there was a flash of profound light, and then a huge flag that covered the sky appeared. Immortal artifact, 4 Grand Xiantian flag. A true immortal great emperor was using an immortal weapon to fight against a martial saint. Even if this martial saint was the #1 martial saint of the world beyond worlds, Chen Qianhua, the Brocade Emperor's actions were truly shameless and shocking. Still, for the Brocade Emperor who had suffered cultivation deviation and was currently in an unstable mental state, this did not seem all that unexpected. Chen Qianhua should be proud that he could make a perfected immortal great emperor act shamelessly. However, if a great emperor who had pushed open the gate of immortality really didn't care about his demeanor and status, then he really wasn't someone that could be stopped by the power of mortals. In the past, it was said that the 4 exalts of the prime clear direct lineage had joined hands to lay down the immortal extermination formation, successfully slaying immortals as martial saints. Yet their enemies were also unarmed. With the protection of the 4 Grands earlier heaven banner, it could not completely defend against this kind of attack that came from the bottom of the heart. It was the Brocade Emperor himself who had a loophole. His gaze flickered slightly as his mental state was still rather unstable. Still, it was not as severe as when he had been struck by Yin Zhaoge's Heart's Will thunder earlier, as he still possessed the strength to battle. Looking at the fluttering 4 Grands earlier heaven banner, Chen Qianhua did not show any signs of mockery or disdain or unwillingness to accept this. Instead, his eyes shone as he appeared overjoyed. Brocade Emperor, your current appearance is unprecedentedly perfect. I am almost about to be reluctant to help you enter the unfeeling Tao just to compete with Yin Zhaoge. The Brocade Emperor's expression did not change, as he was not moved by the words of others in the least, as he directly waved the 4 Grands earlier heaven banner, swinging it down towards Chen Qianhua. Chen Qianhua was neither flustered nor flustered as he pointed behind him. In that direction was precisely that thundercloud of grand illusory spatial thunder, which had yet to completely explode earlier. While he was temperamental and did things as he pleased, Chen Qianhua would always be extremely confident when it came to the specifics of something. This thundercloud of grand illusory spatial thunder had always been within his plans. While clashing with a powerful enemy like the Brocade Emperor, while Chen Qianhua was teleporting, he had always remained between the Brocade Emperor and the thundercloud. With his back to the thundercloud, he could wield it at any time. Chen Qianhua had also considered whether Yin Zhaoge would make a move. As he shifted, he similarly kept Yin Zhaoge and the thundercloud at bay. In clashing with the Brocade Emperor, he had been at a slight disadvantage most of the time. A large part of the reason for this was that he had restricted the trajectory of his movements to a certain extent. In a clash between experts, the slightest difference could result in a great loss. The slightest difference could determine victory and defeat. Chen Qianhua's actions were truly bold and daring. Yet, just as he was about to wield the thundercloud to resist the 4 Grands earlier heaven banner, someone suddenly moved. Yin Zhaoge, who had always been watching coldly from the sidelines and acting cautiously, suddenly flickered as he arrived beneath Chen Qianhua. Boundless devilish qi also congregated on Yin Zhaoge's body at this moment. Instantly, another jet-black devilish avatar appeared within the devilish domain of the 9 underworlds. This was not the jet-black devilish Buddha that Yin Zhaoge had condensed earlier. Instead, it was similar to the devilish avatar that Chen Qianhua had manifested with his immovable heavenly devil body. It was also the manifestation of the creation heavenly devil. Roiling thunder resounded, shooting straight beneath Chen Qianhua's feet. This is also one of the 8 ultimates of creation of the devilish Tao. Chen Qianhua was taken aback slightly. The corresponding supreme martial art to the manifestation of shocking thunder? It was precisely the 8 desolations thunder palm that originated from the creation heavenly devil and ranked alongside the immovable heavenly devil body. This strike was unable to break through Chen Qianhua's immovable heavenly devil body. Still, the Brocade Emperor who was currently attacking Chen Qianhua suddenly felt that incomparably stable immovable heavenly devil body that resembled an eternal divine mountain earlier suddenly become weak. While it still seemed sturdy, inconcealable weakness emanated from within. Thunder descending the mountain and thunder descending the mountain, divination? Chen Qianhua felt it more clearly as his gaze flickered, as he instantly understood this principle. The manifestation of the 8 trigrams, thunder descending the mountain and thunder descending the mountain, the divination. The 2 yang facets were external, solid on the outside and weak on the inside. One had to recuperate as one could not force it. It was tough on the outside but soft on the inside, strong on the outside but weak on the inside. While the 8 desolations thunder palm of the same source had not been able to break through the immovable heavenly devil body, it had caused it to become incomparably weak against external attacks. Now, the 4 grands earlier heaven flag descended, instantly sending Chen Qianhua flying backwards as he spurted blood from his mouth. Behind him, the grand illusory spatial thunder that he had detonated had completely lost control, as it transformed into numerous spatial vortexes that devoured him. The trump card that he had prepared earlier had now become a weapon for others to threaten him with. Injured, Chen Qianhua was hard-pressed to break free of the chaotic flows of space, as he could only be devoured by the spatial vortexes. Gazing upwards, he saw Yin Zhaoge in his jet-black Buddha form once more. Making use of the time when the Brocade Emperor's 4 grands earlier heaven flag was used to attack Chen Qianhua instead of protecting him, Yin Zhaoge chanted once more. As I have heard, devilish salvation of all life. Yet another heart's will thunder struck towards the Brocade Emperor. Having previously suffered a heart's will thunder, and then being attacked by Chen Qianhua with the heart's will heavenly scripture, the Brocade Emperor suffered a 3rd strike now. Chapter 1100. The Brocade Emperor was caught off guard by this sudden blow. Chen Qianhua, who was about to be devoured by the space-time vortex, also widened his eyes. Even Meng Wan, who had been protected by Yin Zhaoge earlier, was stunned on the spot. While he had clashed with the Brocade Emperor earlier, now that the Brocade Emperor and Chen Qianhua were enemies, he could be considered a helper. Worried that the Brocade Emperor and Chen Qianhua would suddenly change their minds, Yin Zhaoge had been silently observing from the sidelines. This was very normal. It was normal for him to attack Chen Qianhua. As compared to the Brocade Emperor, who was clearly flawed due to cultivation deviation, Chen Qianhua's threat was even more direct. Still, Meng Wan was inevitably rather shocked that he had immediately attacked the Brocade Emperor, even as he attacked Chen Qianhua. Although it wasn't uncommon for friends to turn hostile the next moment, it wasn't that rare. Although Chen Qianhua was about to be devoured by the space-time vortex, there was still a chance for him to turn the situation around. Who knew if this mysterious upper exalt still had other trump cards? However, Yin Zhaoge did not hesitate in the slightest. After helping the Brocade Emperor break through Chen Qianhua's defenses, he immediately turned his spear around. Making use of the time when the 4 grands earlier heaven flag was attacking Chen Qianhua rather than defending, he bluntly sent the Brocade Emperor another heart's will thunder. The timing was naturally perfect, and it was perfect to the extreme. However, it could really be said that he changed his attitude faster than flipping a book. It was only natural that Chen Qianhua would do something like this. It was also not surprising that the Brocade Emperor, who had a split soul, would do something like this. While Yin Zhaoge's moral integrity had not been high before this, he still had a bottom line. Now he was doing it even more smoothly than that Emperor in Exalt. Right from the start, His target seemed to have been the Brocade Emperor and Chen Qianhua at the same time. This was even more arrogant than Chen Qianhua's direct confrontation with the Brocade Emperor. Chen Qianhua's eyes lit up when he saw this scene. He was excited like never before. He urgently wanted to see what Yin Zhaoge would do next. However, the space-time vortex after the explosion of the Grand Void spatial thunder had already swallowed him. Even a true immortal would find it hard to control the turbulence caused by the complete explosion of such a huge Grand Void thundercloud. He could only watch helplessly as Yin Zhaoge and the Brocade Emperor vanished before his eyes. Hey! Whether it was when he had been heavily injured by Yin Zhaoge in the Eight Extremities world, or when he had just been injured by the Brocade Emperor, using the Four Grands earlier heaven flag, Chen Qianhua had not felt any sense of defeat or unwillingness in the least. Instead, he had been in high spirits. But at this moment he was strangely dissatisfied. However, no matter what Chen Qianhua thought, he could only be swallowed by the space-time turbulence and disappear in an instant. After confirming that this unstable factor had already vanished, Yin Zhaoge no longer paid it any heed, as he focused all his attention on the Brocade Emperor before him. With the protection of the Four Grands earlier heaven flag, even if he used the Heart's Will Lightning, he would only achieve half the result with twice the effort, and it would be difficult for him to achieve the desired effect. Now that the Brocade Emperor was attacking Chen Qianhua with the Four Grands earlier heaven flag, suddenly making a move, he would definitely be able to succeed. Including his first Heart's Will Lightning, this was his third strike. Yin Zhaoge and Chen Qianhua seemed to be working in tandem, as they both targeted the holes in the Brocade Emperor's mind. Chen Qianhua's attack had also become a part of Yin Zhaoge's plan. As for the problem of burning the bridge after crossing the river, and getting rid of the donkey, when it was no longer of use, Yin Zhaoge automatically ignored it. At this moment, he activated the Heart's Will Lightning with all his might. The Brocade Emperor let out a muffled groan as a Taiji diagram appeared within his pupils which rapidly rotated. However, the black and white yin and yang fishes that formed the Taiji diagram shattered under this high-speed rotation. Having broken through the final boundary, the Brocade Emperor roared towards the heavens before he actually shed his human form entirely, transforming into a massive Taiji diagram that enveloped the heavens and the earth. Mengwan gazed up at that Taiji diagram in shock, unable to speak. Pushing open the door to immortality, no longer being human. Yin Zhaoge gazed at that Taiji diagram as well. Many rules of the human realm may continue to be applicable to true immortals, and they may also no longer be applicable. What determines everything is the true immortal themselves and not the rules. Therefore, immortals may also possess fleshly bodies, being able to conceive and give birth. Yet, they may also lose their fleshly bodies, losing the characteristics of all life forms. Whether they do or not depends on their will. It is not surprising that some changes occur. Yin Zhaoge said casually, if one cannot transcend the immortal mortal tribulation, they will perish and their Tao vanquished. Having transcended, it is a new heavens and earth. How could it be as simple as that? He had already generally understood what changes would occur to the Brocade Emperor now. That massive Taiji diagram of yin and yang was rotating rapidly as well. Then, the black and white Taiji diagram similarly began tearing apart to the sides, gradually changing shape. In the end, the black and white yin and yang fishes separated with a loud bang. One black and one white, they split apart and became independent. The demonic slaughter chi in the nearby 9 underworlds began to crazily gather towards the black and white yin-yang fishes, forming 2 huge masses of chi in the sky. The speed at which the devilish chi was being gathered was even faster than when Yin Zhaoge and Chen Qianhua were using their devilish arts to condense their incarnations. Mengwan seemed to think of something, as she shockingly swiveled her head to look at Yin Zhaoge. Yin Zhaoge's gaze was fixated on those 2 masses of chi, one black, one white, not wavering in the slightest. But when he sensed the bewilderment and uncertainty in Mengwan's heart, he nodded slightly to confirm her guess. Seeing Yin Zhaoge nod, Mengwan turned to look at those 2 massive clumps of clouds in disbelief. The 2 clouds, one black and one white, revolved around a point in the void. Rays of light surged out from the two clouds at the same time. In the sky above, the immortal artifact, the 4 Grand Xiantian flag, was also trembling. As the light grew brighter, the trembling of the 4 Grand Xiantian flag became more and more obvious. When the brilliance reached its peak, the black and white clouds gradually unfolded. Vast purple chi surged within the two clumps of clouds, instantly suffusing a radius of 5 million kilometers. The two purple seas of clouds both extended unceasingly into the distance. A region of vacuum formed between them as they stood opposite each other, clearly separated from each other. The 4 Grand Xiantian flag up above, however, was shaking even more intensely. Gazing over carefully, Yin Zhaoge and Meng Wan saw a figure appear at the center of each purple sea of clouds. Of the two, one was garbed in white, the other in black. Yet, their appearances were exactly the same, as there was no difference at all. Elegant and extraordinarily handsome, they were both clearly in the appearance of the Brocade Emperor. Two Brocade Emperors, one in black, one in white, appeared before Yin Zhaoge and Meng Wan. The two Brocade Emperors stood where they were with their eyes closed, neither speaking nor moving. Seeing this scene, Meng Wan was rendered speechless. She looked at Yin Zhaoge, who shook his head. "Don't get close for now." The great battle earlier had stirred up the winds and clouds of the 9 underworlds, as many evil devils of the 9 underworlds had been drawn over. Amongst them, there had been those wild and violent evil devils, whose minds were not clear as they lunged over. Amidst the purple sea of clouds, the two Brocade Emperors still had their eyes closed. Still they simultaneously moved. It was exactly the same movement, as they simultaneously waved outwards with their right hands. Instantly, it was like a formless blade had slashed through the heavens and the earth, cleaving all the devils of the 9 underworlds who were approaching them into two. Chapter 1101. Before they had opened their eyes, the two Brocade Emperors were exactly the same. Apart from the fact that one was clothed in black, and the other in white, there was no difference at all. Even their devil-slaying moves were already exactly the same, as if they were one person. Now, however, after opening their eyes, it was clearly possible to see the difference between the two. The white-clothed Brocade Emperor's gaze was filled with various emotions, such as fury, sorrow, joy, benevolence, and so on and so forth. One would simply have to sigh in admiration at how a single person's gaze could simultaneously reveal so many emotions. Meanwhile, the black-clothed Brocade Emperor was the complete opposite, as his gaze was indifferent with no emotional fluctuations at all. He did not seem like a living being, as he looked at other living beings like they were lifeless objects. While his gaze was clearly not ferocious, it caused one to tremble in fear. After opening his eyes, the white-clothed Brocade Emperor first looked at Meng Wan, his gaze filled with benevolence and tender love. "Don't be afraid, Wan'er. It's fine." When he looked at Yin Zhaoge, his emotions were rather complex. Little friend Yan's methods are truly impressive. The black-clothed Brocade Emperor first gazed at the 4 Grands earlier heaven flag up above, before glancing indifferently at Yin Zhaoge and Meng Wan. Yin Zhaoge could not feel any warmth from his gaze at all. The shaking 4 Grands earlier heaven flag finally emitted a wung sound as it transformed into a streak of light, flying off into the distance. The black-clothed Brocade Emperor's gaze swept across Yin Zhaoge, Meng Wan, and the white-clothed Brocade Emperor, before he said nothing as he directly set off in pursuit of the 4 Grands earlier heaven flag. We can slowly discuss this when we have the time. Looking at Yin Zhaoge and Meng Wan, the white-clothed Brocade Emperor sighed before chasing after them as well. The chaotic battlefield, which had still been filled with danger a moment ago, suddenly calmed down at this moment. Yin Zhaoge placed a hand over his eyes as he watched the two figures leave before he turned and said to Meng Wan, "It is not that the white-clothed Brocade Emperor does not want to console you. Instead, if the 4 Grands earlier heaven flag falls into the hands of the black-clothed Brocade Emperor, you will be in great danger. In order to ensure your and Red Lotus Fu's safety, this white-clothed Brocade Emperor can only place the 4 Grands earlier heaven flag as his top priority. Of course, he definitely has feelings for the weapon that he has carried with him for many years. After all, The 4 Grand's earlier heaven flag has accompanied him for many years. He is much older than you and Red Lotus. Hearing his words, Mengwan smiled bitterly. Senior apprentice Brother Yen, you know that this is not what I am concerned about. What I want to know is that Father is currently. Yin Zhaoge collected the remnant grand illusory spatial thunder drifting amidst space as he explained. To put it simply, the Brocade Emperor's soul completely split into 2, making use of the devilish chi of the 9 underworlds to reforge his body, thus becoming 2. Past memories, knowledge, and mastery of martial arts are the same no matter if it's black or white. The only difference between the 2 is their consciousness and temperament. Yin Zhaoge smacked his lips. From the looks of it now, white-clothed walks the path of emotion, while black-clothed walks the unfeeling path. Mengwan asked softly, what will happen next? Now they will have to decide the victor between them. Yin Zhaoge answered. Only the victor has the hope of advancing further. Otherwise, one's cultivation base will remain stagnant. Currently, the 2 of them are comparable in strength. While they are both still true immortals, they are both weaker than they were before they split apart. Still, there are no gaps in their minds like before. Yin Zhaoge shrugged. Of course, the so-called weak is only in comparison to other true immortals, and the Brocade Emperor himself. Compared to martial practitioners of the human world, there is still no comparison at all. The gap between the human immortal and immortal realms is still the gap between the human immortal realms at the end of the day. Mengwan blinked as she understood what Yin Zhaoge was implying. The victor between the black and white Brocade Emperors would probably not just be a simple matter of victory or defeat. It would be a battle of life and death. The victor would have the hope of advancing further. Actually, only the living would have the hope of advancing further as well. Or rather, only the soul existence would be able to advance further. Because neither of them was the other's clone. Winning the battle between them is only the first step. Yin Zhaoge compressed the drifting thunderbolts into a tiny thundercloud before storing it away, saying, the victor will have complete control over himself just like before. While their minds are united, the scars caused by cultivation deviation still remain. If they truly want to advance further, they will have to mend those scars. To mend those scars, the things that were changed still have to be done. For example, Yin Zhaoge looked at Mengwan. If the black-clothed Brocade Emperor wins, he will still try to eliminate the 2 of you. Also, he would kill Yin Di and obtain and refine his Grand Simplicity Splendor Cloud. Without the Grand Simplicity Splendor Cloud, the Brocade Emperor who walked the unfeeling path would only be able to reach the peak of the true immortal realm at most. Only with the Grand Simplicity Splendor Cloud would he be able to advance further, standing shoulder to shoulder with the 3 sovereigns. Mengwan nodded, expressing her understanding before asking softly, what if the white-clothed Brocade Emperor wins then? The white-clothed one. Yin Zhaoge said very straightforwardly. I too cannot be certain. Still, I can be certain that if the white-clothed Brocade Emperor wins in the end, the 2 of you would not be in any danger at the very least. Mengwan instantly smiled bitterly once more. Perhaps even the white-clothed Brocade Emperor himself is still unclear on how he can advance further. Yin Zhaoge said mildly, it is precisely because of this uncertainty that the unfeeling side of the Brocade Emperor's soul has been gaining the upper hand before the split. As compared to the Tao of emotion, however difficult it was, the future of the unfeeling Tao at least had a clear path to tread. Meanwhile, the Tao of emotion seemed like a path of death that could not be thought of. Yin Zhaoge deeply suspected that while the peak figures of the world beyond worlds might not like it, most of them would be happy to see the Brocade Emperor walk the unfeeling Tao. That would entail that the Brocade Emperor had hopes of becoming a new sovereign, even continuing to climb higher. For Taoism, which had many things to do in post-Great Calamity times, the more peak experts there were, the better. Still, this was definitely under the precondition that Yin Di and the Grand Simplicity Splendor Cloud were not involved. If Yin Di was involved, it was not just the Sword Sovereign who would not agree to it. The other bigwigs would have to reconsider as well. Yin Di's potential and strength naturally went without saying. While it is selfish, I still hope that the white-clothed father can win at the end of the day. Meng Wan sighed, saying candidly. Yan Zhaoge smiled. This is only human nature. Things having come to this point was not caused by your decision in the first place. Meng Wan looked at Yan Zhaoge. Senior apprentice brother Yan. Was this your original plan? I more or less predicted the current situation. Yan Zhaoge waved his hands. Still, that was not my original goal. I acted in hopes of restraining the unfeeling side of the Brocade Emperor. Still, it looks like the intensity of the confrontation between the Brocade Emperor's soul has already reached a very serious level, resulting in the current situation. He kept the drifting grand illusory spatial thunder before leaving with Meng Wan. While it is not very ideal, the current situation is still not bad. With the white-clothed emperor restraining that black-clothed emperor, it will be much easier for everyone, as there will also be more room for us to maneuver. Still, we cannot completely ignore this. Otherwise, I personally feel that the black-clothed one has a greater chance of winning in a battle between the two Brocade Emperors. Chapter 1102. As compared to the cold and rational black-clothed Brocade Emperor, the emotional white-clothed Brocade Emperor was more prone to revealing flaws in their battle, which were then grasped by the other party. While he supported the white-clothed Brocade Emperor, Yan Zhaoge personally felt that the black-clothed Brocade Emperor's chances of victory were greater. A person who was absolutely rational and unaffected by emotions might not necessarily be successful in every endeavor. Most people would be affected by their emotions to some extent. Rational and ruthless people might be able to gain some advantages, but they might also be at a disadvantage. Not to mention the emotional tendencies of most people. Just based on the way of thinking, rational and emotionless people would make many wrong judgments when they judged others by their own standards. The wrong choice in his eyes might be the right choice in most people's eyes. On the contrary, what was undoubtedly correct in his eyes might be rejected and resisted by most people. If he couldn't understand this point, the deviation would be enough to make his head bleed. And if he could understand this, then he would no longer be an absolutely rational and neutral existence. Still, this referred to the problem of someone like the black-clothed Brocade Emperor assimilating into the environment. In the battle between him and the white-clothed Brocade Emperor, it was indeed harder for him to reveal any flaws. He was also better at capturing and even creating flaws in his opponent. If there are no external forces interfering, the battle between the two emperors will probably drag on for a long time. Yan Zhaoge traversed the 9 underworlds along with Meng Wan. It is just that how many people are paying attention to this matter? For you and Red Lotus Fu, while the black-clothed Brocade Emperor is constantly thinking of getting rid of you, there is still the white-clothed Brocade Emperor, who will do his best to protect you and stop him. Yan Zhaoge smiled. You can also look at it from another angle. If you two sisters are safe, the black-clothed Brocade Emperor will not be able to win at the end of the day. As for now, the focal point of the battle is the immortal artifact, the 4 Grands earlier heaven flag. Whoever manages to regain control of the immortal artifact will gain the upper hand in the battle. Hearing this, Meng Wan nodded silently. Yan Zhaoge brought her along as he flew. While the 9 underworld's devils were blocking their way, there weren't any particularly troublesome devils. Their journey was rather smooth. In comparison, it was more troublesome to think about how to leave the 9 underworlds and return to the human world. The 9 underworlds corroded the heavens and the earth, and everyone in the mortal world cursed and beat them up. Once a crack of the 9 underworlds was discovered, Kendi would immediately seal it if he had the ability to do so. While this prevented the 9 underworlds from corrupting the human realm, it also left Yan Zhaoge with no way of turning back. Previously, it would be best if he could return to where he came from the land of Tranquil Stream. However, he had to be wary of the experts of the Immortal Court waiting there for him to fall into their trap. Traversing the 9 underworlds, Yan Zhaoge identified his direction, whilst also thinking about how the encompassing Emperor and Mars Halberd were doing earlier. Logically speaking, as the Brocade Emperor had said, the encompassing Emperor should be fine. Yan Zhaoge and Mars Halberd were the main targets of the experts of the Immortal Court. Thinking of Mars halberd, Yin Zhaoge scratched his head a little. He didn't feel any ill will towards this existence who should be considered a weapon, or an expert of Taoism. He still hoped that the heavens would help him, and allow him to escape with his life. The place where the battle took place had long been destroyed beyond recognition. In the demon domain, there was a scarlet path that extended far into the distance. Raging flames burned for a long time. From the looks of it, it was obviously the traces left by Mars halberd, who had broken through the encirclement and escaped far away. However, there were also remnants of the aura of other forces, which belonged to other people, chasing the trace of Mars halberd. Looking at the traces of flames, Yin Zhaoge pondered for a moment before he suddenly turned and walked along that scarlet path. After a long time, Yin Zhaoge's heart jolted slightly. Continuing forward, he indeed saw a door that seemed to exist vaguely amidst the 9 underworlds before him. In order to escape, Mars halberd attempted to flee into extra-dimensional space. Indeed, he found another land of tranquil stream as an exit. Yin Zhaoge nodded satisfactorily. The 9 underworlds corroded everywhere, forming more than one land of tranquil stream amidst endless space. It was just that they were very hard to find. Through this land of tranquil stream, Yin Zhaoge finally left the devilish domain of the 9 underworlds with Meng Wan, returning to the human realm. He was careful in all aspects to avoid being ambushed. Still, everything was still peaceful. As far as the eye could see, there was an even more obvious path of flames in the land of tranquil stream, which continued extending into the distance. Meanwhile, while the traces left behind by his pursuers were also very obvious, they seemed to have been unable to stop him as they continued to pursue and flee unceasingly. Yin Zhaoge calmed down slightly. From the looks of it, Mars halberd still had a chance to escape. Although there were at least 2 sovereigns of the immortal court attacking together, the environment in the 9 underworlds was very complicated. The 9 underworlds was surrounded by devils, which attracted the top great devils. Even the sovereigns of the immortal court would be affected, and unable to act freely. Yin Zhaoge didn't continue to pursue the path of flames. Instead, he left the land of tranquil stream in another direction, and fled into the endless space. The land of tranquil stream was so vast that it would take many days to get out of it. When they arrived at the extra-dimensional space, it would take even more time and energy to distinguish the path and return to the world beyond worlds. And this was under the premise that Yin Zhaoge had a good understanding of the changes of space. If it were someone else, he would probably be completely lost in the void. After drifting for many days, Yin Zhaoge gradually got a clear idea of the direction. However, at this moment, he vaguely felt that the 2 of them seemed to be approaching a grand world, which was similar to the world beyond worlds, but also completely different. Yin Zhaoge seemed to have understood something. Could it be? As he was thinking, he suddenly saw several sword lights shining in the distance. The sword light approached, and the person in the lead was a young man with handsome features. Seeing the other party's appearance, Yin Zhaoge could not help but feel amused. The newcomer was someone familiar. It was precisely the disciple of the prime clear lineage, Sun Zhongda, who had once impersonated Yin Zhaoge and traversed the southeastern Yang Heaven territory of the world beyond worlds. Seeing Yin Zhaoge, Sun Zhongda was first dazed before his face was filled with awkwardness. Yin Zhaoge noticed that the other party seemed to subconsciously want to turn tail and run. Sun Zhongda naturally didn't really flee as he slowly walked over, bowing towards Yin Zhaoge. Yin senior apprentice Uncle Yin. The other disciples of the prime clear lineage beside him were mostly appraising Yin Zhaoge curiously. Still, they did not forget their manners as they all came forward and bowed. We greet senior apprentice Uncle Yin. Like Gao Qing, Sun Zhongda and the others were all successors of the roving Jade Heaven's Green Duckweed Mountains Minor White Peak. The master of Green Duckweed Mountains Minor White Peak was Gao Qing's grandfather, the eldest son of the Dragon Spring Emperor, and the profound sovereign, Gao Xuebua. Gao Xuebua was of the same generation as Yin Zhaoge's father Yin Di. Meanwhile, Sun Zhongda and the others were even a generation younger than Yin Zhaoge. After Broad Creed Mountain's opening ceremony in the world beyond worlds, The identities of Yin Zhaoge and Yin Di had been known by all under the heavens. The roving Jade Heavens had received the news as well, with the Dragon Spring Emperor personally confirming it. Only then did Gao Qing and the other disciples of the younger generation know that Yin Zhaoge, whom they had met once before, actually had such a relationship with their family. Sun Zhongda was naturally no exception. Chapter 1103. Sun Zhongda's personality was slick and flexible. Although he was arrogant, he was much calmer than other sword cultivators. Most of the time, he was the one who had to socialize with the outside world when his fellow disciples went out to gain experience. Being embarrassed in front of Yin Zhaoge was not just because of seniority. In order to make it easier for him to traverse the world beyond worlds that year, he had impersonated Yin Zhaoge. Who would have thought that his luck would really be so bad? Having only impersonated Yin Zhaoge for a few days before he met the real Yin Zhaoge. After Yin Zhaoge had captured him, he had indeed suffered a bit. And it just so happened that Yin Zhaoge had now actually become his senior. However slippery Sun Zhongda was, seeing Yin Zhaoge now, he could only awkwardly find a hole to hide in. After a while, he finally regained his composure, straightening his posture as he bowed towards Yin Zhaoge, replying to Senior Apprentice Uncle Yen. This place is indeed already very close to the roving Jade Heavens. We came out to gather some special treasures of extra-dimensional space. Now that we have gained enough, we are just about to return to the roving Jade Heavens. If Senior Apprentice Uncle Yen is free, why not travel with us? The seniors of the sect often talk about you and your father, Senior Grand Uncle Yen. Yin Zhaoge smiled. The elders of your clan are polite. It should be this Yen who has disturbed you. I'm ashamed to say that I didn't know about the relationship between our two sections. It wasn't until our sect's opening ceremony that my father and I found out about our ancestors. While we are in the world beyond worlds, we father and son have always hoped to have a chance to visit the roving Jade Heavens and meet the Dragon Spring Emperor's family. It was just that we were unable to find a way to do so. Previously, we were still waiting for a fortuitous encounter. I didn't expect that the opportunity would come so soon. This Yen is pleasantly surprised. If the seniors of the roving Jade Heavens don't mind, this Yen hopes to pay a visit. Sun Zhongda said. That would be great. Please follow me, Senior Apprentice Uncle Yen. He looked at Meng Wan. Is this Senior Apprentice Uncle Yan's fellow disciple? Yin Zhaoge answered. This is the daughter of one of the world beyond worlds 5 emperors, the Brocade Emperor. I wonder if it would be convenient for us to enter the roving Jade Heavens. Daughter of the Brocade Emperor? Sun Zhongda glanced rather quizzically at Meng Wan. As an elite of the world beyond world's younger generation, Sun Zhongda knew of Fu Ting's appearance as well. However, he did not continue speaking, nodding and saying, since he is Senior Apprentice Uncle Yan's companion, there is naturally no problem. Yin Zhaoge smiled. Of course I had to come as soon as possible. Still, it is indeed a bit of a coincidence that I was able to arrive today. It is also my good luck. It might not be good luck, Long Hanhua teased, because he estimated that you and Senior Apprentice Uncle Yen would not arrive so quickly. Grandfather just happened to enter secluded cultivation a few days ago. You might not be able to see him this time. Sun Zhongda and the others were left speechless by the side. While this Senior Apprentice Uncle Long's personality was not as cold and harsh as his father's, he was also a cold, tough, and unyielding person. Ever since he had returned to the roving Jade Heavens, Gao Qing aside, the other disciples of the younger generation had never seen Long Hanhua chat and laugh with anyone like this. Senior Apprentice Granduncle Long is in secluded cultivation? Yin Zhaoge put a hand on his head, smiling bitterly. This is indeed unfortunate. I wonder if the other seniors are here? He and Long Hanhua had been on pretty good terms back in the world beyond worlds back then. Meeting him now, he was extremely happy as he spoke in a very relaxed manner. Father is not in secluded cultivation. Eldest uncle should be here as well. Long Hanhua smiled. They are all very happy to hear that you have come. Come follow me. After Yin Zhaoge had left the 9 underworlds for many days, traversing the land of tranquil stream, and drifting amidst extra-dimensional space, finally arriving at the roving jade heavens. Someone had also left the 9 underworlds. World beyond worlds, Kunlun Mountains, Qianhua Peak. This Dao arena belonged to someone who shared the same name as it. It should be said that this mountain peak had been renamed after the owner of this place had occupied it. This was a famed sacred ground in the world beyond worlds as well. Its owner was naturally the head of the 10 exalts, the upper exalt Chen Qianhua. Still, Chen Qianhua did not reside here most of the time. Instead, it was his younger brother, the earthly young master Chen Kuanhua, who spent half of the year cultivating here. One day, as Chen Kuanhua was in the cave manor, a streak of radiance suddenly descended from the heavens. As the radiance faded, it was none other than the upper exalt, Chen Qianhua. This number 1 martial saint of the world beyond worlds had a rare look of despondency on his usually lazy face. "Big brother, you?" Chen Kuanhua looked rather taken aback as he looked at his elder brother. Chen Qianhua waved his hands, saying rather vexedly, "Don't mention it. There was something extremely interesting that I missed out on. There is really nothing more vexing under the heavens." Chapter 1104. Earthly young master Chen Kuanhua looked at his elder brother and felt surprised. He couldn't imagine what could make him so vexed. Chen Qianhua did not explain further, and clapped his hands lightly. The entire Qianhua Peak instantly shook. Thousands of rays of light flashed from the foot of the mountain, illuminating the surrounding world. A vast and majestic aura burst forth. Chen Kuanhua was even more astonished. "Big brother, are you actually going to take out the heavenly heart ruler?" In the world beyond worlds, the upper exalt Chen Qianhua was the undisputed number 1 martial saint. Ever since he had established the position of the upper exalt, no one had relied on external objects, only their cultivation bases. He had been able to defeat all the martial saints of the world beyond worlds alone. Even a perfected immortal emperor, who had pushed open the gate of immortality, might not be able to defeat him. Without any special reason, the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors would naturally not make things difficult for him. Therefore, all these years, while everyone in the world beyond worlds knew that the upper exalt was very powerful, no one knew exactly how powerful he was. Barring the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, there was no one in the world beyond worlds who could push him to the bottom in a one-on-one battle. Therefore, there was naturally no one who knew that this upper exalt possessed an immortal artifact as a martial saint. A long bronze ruler flew out from the bottom of Qianhua Peak and landed in front of Chen Qianhua. Immortal weapon, heavenly heart ruler. A treasure that even some true immortal emperors did not possess had appeared in the hands of a martial saint. Chen Qianhua flicked his sleeve, casually keeping that bronze ruler. The 4 grands earlier heaven flag was in the way a little. Otherwise, I would have been able to see for myself how that Yin Zhaoge managed to split the brocade emperor into 2. Chen Qianhua did not seem to care much about the immortal artifact, which was as precious as their lives. If it wasn't for the fact that his interest had been dampened, he probably wouldn't have remembered that he had such a divine weapon. Right now, he wasn't bringing it with him to take revenge. Instead, it was for the sake of being prepared. He didn't want to encounter a similar situation again and be sent out of the arena in advance, missing the good show in his eyes. Chen Kuanhua looked at the bronze ruler that his elder brother had put away with some fascination. He could live in Chen Qianhua's cave mansion, use Chen Qianhua's other treasures, and use Chen Qianhua's influence and connections. However, there were some things that he could never possess. An individual's strength was only one of them. That bronze ruler that seemed to be able to measure the heavens and earth was another example. It was not that Chen Qianhua did not allow him to use it, but his cultivation was not strong enough to activate the heavenly heart ruler. That was a true immortal weapon. How many people in the mortal world could control it? Sighing inwardly, Chen Kuanhua calmed his emotions and pondered on his elder brother's earlier words, before he could not help but be slightly taken aback. Brocade Emperor, split into 2? Yeah. Chen Qianhua's eyes shone. It should be that Yin Zhaoge's handiwork that caused the Brocade Emperor's soul to completely split apart before refining the devilish chi of the 9 underworlds and reforging their respective bodies. Now there are 2 brocade emperors, one walking the unfeeling Tao while the other walking the emotional Tao. This is something that I had not anticipated. That Yin Zhaoge is truly an interesting person. Even if the brocade emperor went mad, he would still be inferior to him. Saying thus, this upper exalt became vexed. Tisk, it's a pity that I couldn't see it with my own eyes, only able to deduce it afterwards. Just thinking about it makes me furious. That Yin Zhaoge is truly a little strange, the earthly young master Chen Kuanhua said. Elder brother, you weren't able to investigate his background. Chen Qianhua said straightforwardly, I couldn't. His younger brother was taken aback upon hearing this, feeling even more shocked than when he had heard about the brocade emperor earlier. Regaining his wits, Chen Kuanhua's expression directly changed as he was unprecedentedly solemn as he gazed at his elder brother, pausing between every word as he asked, Is it that you are unwilling to see through him so early? Or is it that you really can't find out anything about him? I already said that I can't find out anything. While Chen Qianhua's expression was lazy, his gaze was bright as he was filled with excitement. It is precisely because of this that this Yin Zhaoge is truly a wonderful person. Do you know how joyous I feel? It is unprecedentedly joyous. Chen Kuanhua was shocked upon hearing this. He, Chen Kuanhua, was probably one of the people in this world who was most clear on how terrifying this seemingly lazy, strange purple-clothed youth, who came from the same mother as him was. Most of the time, even the words one of could be removed, this purple-clothed youth did not care about many things at all. That was because he could already roughly know the outcome of these things with just a single glance. Back when Chen Qianhua's cultivation base had still been low, if one were to say that there might still be deviations in the future, things that had already happened in the past were mostly as clear as palm lines in his eyes as the cause and effect could be seen clearly. The relevant people's cultivation bases were not much higher than his. To him, most of these matters were no secret at all. Of course, this required him to actively seek out information with a goal in mind instead of passively obtaining it. It was naturally not without reason that the upper exalt was knowledgeable, possessing countless treasures and secret manuals, as well as the immortal artifact, the heavenly heart ruler, accompanying him. This was because he grasped too much information that others did not, being able to search for things that he was interested in. While there would be exceptions, they would be extremely rare. This was the reason why the upper exalt often roamed the outside world, his movements erratic and unpredictable. As Chen Qianhua's cultivation base grew higher and higher, the levels that he could come into contact with also grew higher and higher. The earthly young master Chen Kuanhua, who had personally experienced Broad Creed Mountain's opening ceremony, did not doubt Yin Zhaoge's strength at all. Still, his cultivation base was still much lower than Chen Qianhua's at the end of the day. Now that Chen Qianhua admitted that he was unable to see through Yin Zhaoge, how could Chen Kuanhua not feel shocked? The lofty true immortal, the brocade emperor who had already pushed open the door to immortality, could see through the cause and effect of many things. Yet he was unable to see through an immortal bridge martial saint. When I participated in Broad Creed Mountain's opening ceremony previously, I was rather wary of that Yin Zhaoge. Yen Di had the grand simplicity splendor cloud. Therefore, I did not choose to act against them. After composing himself, Chen Kuanhua said softly, I chose Yen Di's master, Yuan Zhengfeng. Through the heart's will seal, I obtained some things. While he was not as knowledgeable as his elder brother, the upper exalt, the earthly young master Chen Kuanhua, was also renowned for being proficient in many supreme martial arts. It was naturally thanks to his elder brother that he was proficient in so many supreme martial arts. Still, few people knew that the supreme martial art that the earthly young master Chen Kuanhua was most proficient in was the heart's will heavenly scripture of the Jade Clear lineage's primordial heavenly scriptures. According to Chen Kuanhua's view, the heart's will heavenly scripture was the strongest existence amongst the later Heaven 6 scriptures. Therefore, he had cultivated it diligently, spending a great deal of effort on it. Through the heart's will seal, he was able to capture the thoughts and fluctuations of others. While he was unable to read their memories, against those whose cultivation bases were similar to or lower than his, when the other party was caught unawares, he would be able to virtually read their minds as he rarely failed. Chen Kuanhua said, "One of them is that there seems to be a female disciple of their sect who is very special. There are many people who look exactly the same as her. While they are not related by blood, they all look exactly the same, also possessing extraordinary talent and strength." Partway through his words, he was interrupted by Chen Qianhua with a look of disgust on his face. "You should know that I hate repetitive and similar things." Chen Kuanhua nodded, saying no more. "Whatever you want to do, you can do it yourself." Chen Qianhua walked out of the cave manor. Chen Kuanhua asked, "Where are you going now, big brother?" The purple-clothed youth halted, smiling lazily. "It is rare that life has become interesting. I naturally have to properly enjoy it." You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.